picture. I'm not seeing anything. Holy. Why you gotta do me like this, YouTube? That's hilarious. Maybe somebody will come into the chat and let me know if they see anything. I guess I'll just like sit here and wait and see if Kat shows up, and then she can tell me if she sees anything. We're supposed to be doing the final installment of our reading that she has been doing. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been reading the book. She's been reading the book. Um, Patriarchy and primitive accumulation around the world, or something like that. It is deep stuff. Amazing academic work by the. I guess it's translated from the German. Because Maria Mies is German, so and it's been an amazing follow up to the thing that she read us over the summer. Oh, the title of which escapes me because I'm so distracted right now, not being able to see anything, and I don't know if anybody else can see anything. So I don't know why you guys would be able to see it, but I can't see anything. But I also don't want to just, you know, leave because I already sent Kat the link to come and join us. So, oh my goodness. This is very not cool. Okay, Kat is here. Hello. Hello. Oh, great. So you can tell me if you actually see anything on my side because I don't.
I see you.
You do? Okay,
I do
good.
see you.
Okay, all I
What's
see
going
is
on with
black
YouTube
space.
now?
I'm glad I stuck around then because all I see is black space and I just about panicked and
Yeah,
then
no, I
noped
see
out.
you. Fine.
Okay. How are you?
I'm good. Tired. It's been
Yeah, same.
didn't get much sleep last night. Just busy.
Oh,
Christmas
anything
setting up
exciting?
everything.
Hmm?
Christmas setting up everything. Had to go to the mall. I hate the mall on Christmas. I hate it for the best of days, but like Christmas is the
Yes.
worst of them.
Yes.
So
Agree
that's my
entirely.
life right now.
I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
You
Just
survived.
inflated.
Yeah, you survived.
What
You
was
gotta be
that?
tough. No, I'm serious. Seriously, I I sound like I'm being sarcastic, but entirely.
No,
I
I didn't
avoid
hear
them
what you
all whenever
said.
possible. I
Yeah,
avoid
yeah,
them all whenever
exactly.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same old, same old. So how have you been?
Oh, about the same. We pretty much have our Christmas set up, and I'm just kind of waiting around for the kids to get out of school, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. Good old
Yeah.
break. That's
Hello,
fine.
Demon J7 and Evie's World of Cookies. I love your hair. You look so beautiful. Thank you. I
See, people
combed it.
can see
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, people can see me. I can't see myself. It's a black space. So
That's so weird.
it is. It is. It's fine. I won't be
But they have
self-conscious staring
YouTube.
at myself the whole time for once. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So what's going on with the world of you? Just the same old thing?
Oh, well, it's been a book week because
Yeah.
the video is finished and I need to get some shorts made for it, like I was saying, to promote it. But
Yeah.
uh
Well, that's good.
yeah. So I got the scene started, like really good and started.
Nice.
Yeah, it's maybe three-quarters of the way done, if you just factor in the fact that I have to finish it still and edit it and whatever.
Yeah, but like actually put down onto paper though, kind of a
You're
thing.
right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just been the same old, dealing with life. Things just looking bad out
You
there in the
know,
dystopia land. Like, I
stability's
guess,
not so bad, Uh,
Well, because like one of the things that it was announced is that like okay, because you know how the Trump tried to pass the big beautiful bill, but he had to revise some things in there, right? Because nobody would have a pass. There was, I think, only one person that was going to let it pass without a revision. But
uh,
so he had to revise it, right? Because of a clause that was shoved in there about AI and allowing them having no restrictions at all for 10 years. So all the laws that states have put into place, yeah, that wouldn't be effective anymore, right? And so what happened, he just announced that he's going to sign an executive order this week to do it, since it would have passed through democratic means through the big beautiful bill and Congress. So that's fun. So you have absolutely no restrictions on AI now whatsoever. And already supposedly I think about 1 million jobs have been sort of replaced, and by corporations cutting back in wake like in knowing that that this was going to happen, right? Because they want automation to take over. So it's getting worse. I don't know how this, and I don't know how exactly this is going to affect Canada, but I'm assuming it going along for the ride because that's what fucking Canada always does. It's basically America light.
that's a terrible thing for a Canadian to say. I'm so sorry. Again, that's awful.
It's not your fault.
No,
But I mean, we got the same predicament here, right? We've got corporate, oligarchs running the show.
right, yeah, and I just wouldn't wish that on anybody, much less. I mean,
No,
I don't know. I
I
don't
don't
know.
blame you.
The more I learn about Canadians, the more I learn that niceness is like not a facade, but it's not all the way deep. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's a facade. I tell you.
Oh no, 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 no. I know. I knew one hit my husband's best friend who sadly passed away was the nicest guy I've ever
Well,
met, and he was
some of
from
the people might be nice on an interpersonal level, but everything else.
no, 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 no. And then you hear about like the war crimes and stuff, and you're like, what?
Oh yeah, Canada does its war crimes all the time.
Yeah.
It loves its
Like,
war crimes. Like,
oh my gosh, internationally and at home, it's just this
oh
perpetual
yeah,
thing that you
oh
guys have
yeah,
going
oh
on. It's
yeah.
like, wow.
Trust me, your perspective changes when trying to stand up for international law and um the code of that, and then fucking having CSIS, which is our our CIA intelligence, like come after you and point a fucking automatic rifle to your temple. It's not fun.
Oh my god, is that a true
Yeah,
story that
yeah,
happened to
true story.
you?
Me,
Oh my god.
yeah,
Oh
when
my god.
because just for occupying a drilling barge that was in the Burnaby Burnaby is a channel. It's near Burnaby, anyways. Burrard, I think it is. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyways, a channel there because it started drilling holes when the NEF or whatever hadn't even disclosed whether or not they were going to be doing that for the pipeline yet, right? They were going to have a democratic vote, but the company still started going in barging, and they don't have authority to do so because it's under indigenous, land title. It's not, they didn't have legality to do that, right? They hadn't like won any sort of vote yet, but they started anyways. So a couple of us went to occupy the barge on agreement with the hereditary chief of the tribe that was that area,
Hmm.
and still didn't matter. They what they did was before they came. She says they literally all of our phones died, so they made it so that it dropped zone around the area. Thank God I had we had the foreknowledge to call in the newscast because what they didn't want was witnesses. So they dropped our cell phone access, right? Our ability to use it, and they came and they had CISAs come in like aboard with a bunch of automatic rifles.
Oh
And
my god.
that the only reason why it didn't nothing came of it was because we also had someone in the bush filming, and he was able to send the tape off to some independent news sources, right? That will showcase what's going on because all the eyes were on the sort of I think it was NEF is what they call it. It's some sort of economic whatever,
Uh huh.
and they were having their the sort of the upper NGO protests over at that voting station, and nobody's like looking over here while they're doing their shit anyways. And because no one was there, they were hoping to be able to come in without anybody noticing, like being not filmed. So who knows what would have happened? And they tried to drop our cell phone coverage, like they tried to drop so that we couldn't call anyone. So
Nice.
that was an experience.
Yeah,
I
no
guess I never told
shit.
you that story before.
No, 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 no. It's
Oh,
fun. We
yeah.
don't share history stories a lot. That's amazing. How long ago was this?
Oh, this was a while ago.
Uh,
Um, 10 years.
oh wow.
Yeah,
Ah,
but yeah. So then they took us in and had to be held in solitary confinement. But because what they were doing was illegal, and therefore what the CSIS did was actually kidnapping, because they had no authority to do so. What they did instead of charging us, because there was nothing to charge us with. In fact, we probably had the right to sue them. They didn't. They just held us in solitary confinement for the whole day and waited till all the newscasts like left the building that was surrounding it. Because after getting the news and stuff like that, there was um, people want to know what's going on. Right, it's a news story that's happening. So
right.
yeah. Yeah,
Oh
so
my
we didn't get
god.
charged or anything like that, but because like what they were doing was literally legally kidnapping, because there was
That's
nothing
so
illegal we
scary.
were doing. I I know, that's how friendly and happy Canada is.
Yeah, right.
So as long as you play fucking, if you play nice and just fucking do what you're told, do what you say, and be a yes man, then they're fine with you. But fucking, anything else, yeah, they're just as awful as the states.
Yeah, yeah. That does sound very familiar. You know. Mm.
Yeah. I'm surprised I never told you that story. Yeah, yeah. I've got some stories though.
Oh, I'm sure you have
They
alluded to
my
things. You have alluded to things, and I'm always just like, yeah, right on. Because I don't feel comfortable asking you necessarily. You know what I mean? Like, and
yeah.
making trying to in like um not make, but like entice you to divulge things. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
and make
No, I
yourself
know.
like not safe somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, but the thing is, no one knows what I look like. No one knows my
Yeah,
actual name,
yeah.
except for you, because you have my email address. Nobody
Well,
else does.
yeah.
And so, like, I'm not really easily as tractable. I mean,
Hmm.
that's getting harder and harder this day and age. But I mean,
I'm sure the
so I'm not
faceless
too
thing is
worried.
cool. I kind of envy that. Oh, thank you, geek girl. How are you, honey? Also, Scott is here, and he says he thinks he knows what you're talking about as far as the place.
Oh
Can't
yeah,
listen today. Just got to the Spravato clinic. Oh my goodness, what is that? Oh my goodness,
bravado. It
I
sounds
don't
like a
know.
clinic for like having bravado. Like what? Is that what you said?
Spravato. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I forgot to type a super chat message.
Uh, Super V.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you, honey. I hope whatever you're doing, it goes well, and that you are
Yeah,
doing well.
yeah, no doubt. That's no fun.
Mm.
Clinics suck.
And
Doctors
staying
suck.
warm. Yeah. The big thing around here is the homeless people who are shantied up at our church,
Yeah,
which is like,
which
okay,
is like
this is really funny, actually. I'm going to tell this
what?
story, and we're almost 15 minutes in, so all the looky loos will be gone by now. Um, so
The
our
looky.
our priest is a 65-year-old woman, okay?
Yeah.
And she's very sweet and very conservative. Okay, this
Mm-hmm.
is Tennessee. Okay, this is the
Mm-hmm.
liberal church where they make a big deal of being LGBTQ friendly. Okay, because that's why we go to this church, because it's the Democrat church.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not doing so great. lately, and they had two homeless guys caught down there fucking on the security cameras the other night. And she gets a notification every time the alarm is set off by the camera, or every
Oh my
time the
god! So
camera's
she's like,
triggered. So she's like at home in bed or doing whatever, kind of ignoring it until it just keeps on going off and off and keeps going off. And she's finally like, oh my God, what is going on down there? And
oh my, good for them. You know what? Good for them.
and that's what. But so my husband is on the vestry actually, and so he got to be part of the meeting where they discussed what they were going to do about this.
Oh my god, I love it.
Yeah, yeah, and she's just very scandalized, and I'm like, oh, okay, so they can have people ODing on the property, but and that's just a sad thing. But this we must do something about. What? Whatever,
You
whatever.
know what? With the things that homeless people have been known to do, this is not me like just harping like oh the homeless, but like like at least where I'm from, because it's an open fucking drug party down here because it's illegal. It's legalized, basically.
Oh wow.
I mean, at least they're not burning down with like the church, literally, because that happens a lot with their blow torches for their drugs and stuff like that.
Wow. Well, the building's brick, so that would be. I
But
mean,
still, the damage inside.
yeah, they don't come like inside, but there's this. Okay, it's a super 1970s split level building with all these brick eaves and shit. You know the kind I
Yeah.
mean? It's one
Well,
of
there's
them.
that, but there's also like the fact of like an overdose. Like there's
No,
different things
yeah.
that happen, right? Like that. So the fact that they're fucking isn't the worst thing in the world,
No,
right?
I
They're
know. That's
just
what I'm saying. They literally had
yeah,
somebody OD under the barbecue pit, apparently,
yeah,
not
right.
that
Which is
long
sad.
ago, and which
So I
is
mean, at least they're having some
horrible.
fun. Like they're just having a little
Right.
hanky
That's what
panky.
I said. I'm like, oh, okay. So they were both fine with it. My husband was like ready to hear about how somebody got the crap beat out of them or something.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
exactly, right?
the way that the priest had been talking about it.
Yeah. But I mean,
And
it is a priest as well. So, but
no,
and
I know, I
you
know, I
understand
know.
why she's acting like this, but it's still really funny.
It is really funny. I'm glad you appreciate it. I just wanted to share that. That was the big thing that happened this
That's a
week.
great story. I'm glad we were able to share these details about ourselves.
Hey, I was not the one. Okay.
It's all by proxy. Like you're just sort of associated to the connection.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's so
yeah. I mean,
funny.
it's
It's
this.
still a good story,
I get to share it. Yeah.
right?
Does that count as using underprivileged people for content? I don't. I mean,
Well, no, it's not. That's not what the funny part is. The funny part is the priest going,
yeah,
"Oh,
right.
they're fine. Like they're having a good time. They're
And I
good."
happened, and so then we had the ecumenical service literally last the same night that they had this meeting. So she's up there preaching to all the neighborhood. And I know for a fact that 2 hours ago she was sitting in the room talking about gay sex.
Oh my god.
That made me laugh too.
That's beautiful. what what a good time.
Yeah, she's retiring and I don't blame her, like
Yeah, poor old lady.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, so yeah, you say that. Okay, so you've been to Vancouver and Victoria around that area. I think it's the Burrard Inlet that I'm thinking of.
Right. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, it's just been so long. I'm like, oh my god, I can't even remember the name of the area. And it was all.
Yeah.
It was actually something. It wasn't like I was actually going to Vancouver to plan on doing. It was out of the spur of the moment because you have to. That's what you have to do sometimes. Sometimes plans change and they change fast if you're doing direct action things, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. That makes
And
sense.
just know that things are not always going to go the way that usually you're going to want it to go, right? Not all the time. You have to think on your feet. The reason I was there was because they were having a meeting of the NEF meeting at this really fancy smancy hotel, right? And me and someone else we actually rented a room because they had blocked it from the outside people coming in. We rented a room, and so we were acting as if we were just there, like as customers, as like as tenants or whatever of the hotel. And what we were going to do was we were actually going to go in, like sneak in and crash into the meeting because it's like this big, huge meeting and it's big, like area of all these corporate giants and
Mhm.
politicians. And we were going to go
Wow.
crash there and like lock ourselves to the area and like set off the alarm, right?
Yeah.
So that didn't work out as well. Then we got a call saying, by the way, there's an occupation. There's only like three people up there because no one else is like knows about this, or they're too chicken shit to actually do what being direct action, right? Because a lot of the times with these NGOs, what they'll do is they'll try to organize their events in such a way that they kind of usher people in certain directions of what you can and cannot do, and what you can and cannot think. It's a way to organize, resistance into a more and funnel it back into the system by not doing any sort of anything that's going to help the situation, as if they give
Mhm.
a shit that it's your meeting is going to be like corrupt, that and no oversight, right?
Mhm.
So let's just like with our little placards, like wave it around. Well, they know what they're doing. They don't care. Sometimes you have to do something else, but they really try to funnel you into only doing very minimal actions. So yeah, so we were just gonna do that, but and no one else was actually willing to go there. So I was like, oh yeah, let's go. I'll do
Oh
it.
wow. I
So
mean, I
yeah,
guess.
it was interesting, and there's other like actions that I've and protest stuff that's happened, but a lot of the sort of resistance to corporate oversight and ownership and human rights abuses, especially with the First Nations,
Mhm.
like that just gets like easily swept under the rug. Like no, and it's been done so because I think a lot of them have been infiltrated, a lot of groups from CSIS
I
themselves,
believe
and
it.
so it's really decimated the resistance movement where it used to be really huge here. Like we used to have the Squamish Five, which like blew up weapons manufacturing plants.
Mm. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know one of the ladies that because they got caught. I know one of the ladies. They were also part of the
Mm.
Women's Fire Brigade, which
Mm.
um which blew up a lot of blowing up this really underground porno distribution where they were like showing snuff films, all this really crazy shit. Like, and the police weren't doing anything about it because the police were like involved a lot of the times,
Yeah.
right?
Of
And
course.
so
Wow.
nothing would do, nobody would do anything about it. So they end up blowing that up their building, of course with no one there. But like when I say radical, like this area is known for being radical. So this is, I think, a lot of the reason why it got infiltrated was to really shoehorn people away from any sort of direct action. So that's sad.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with
It's
this,
like that
but yeah.
everywhere, unfortunately. So,
Oh yeah, people have become
yep.
so docile.
Yeah.
Even just like, and I don't know, I'm not really referring to you, but like even with tech and a lot of the social media, like it's there to track you. It's not there for you to share your life story. It really isn't.
Yeah. Well, I
And
do, this is what I do. This is my social media.
yeah,
I don't do
but I'm not saying, like
Facebook.
I
I
said, not
don't.
really you, but I know a lot of
Yeah. No,
people
I
who
know.
will like be a part of direct actions, but yet put their face and their information, and then they look at me like I'm weird because I'm asking you, what is, you think that's a good thing or a good idea to do? If you say you want to do, be involved in boots on the ground actions, because it's not. It's very scary. You want to be as less tractable as possible.
I feel like everybody will eventually understand these things at this rate. It just keeps getting
Yeah,
worse
but it
and
might be too
worse.
late by then because they've got all the information on you. That's the problem, right? Because it stays. But I'm from an era that didn't have. I grew up in a time when there wasn't any social media, and it was like started in my lifetime when I like in my early 20s. So
Right. I
I had time
wonder.
not to be brought into this.
You're not that much older than me, are you? I
No,
forget.
I think we're like the same age, aren't we?
Yeah, right. We've talked about this, I think, like once a year, the last 2 years running or something. Um, no, I was 42 in October.
Oh no, okay, I am younger.
You're younger than me. Okay.
I'm 40.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Nice.
about the same age,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, essentially. It's
essentially.
going to
Yeah.
become more and more the same as time goes on, you know?
Yeah, right.
My husband's 45, you know. He keeps forgetting we didn't actually go to high school together because back then, 3 years was a big deal.
Yeah, back then it
Not,
was. Yeah,
it's not so much now, you know.
everything sort of melds together when you get older.
Well, and there's just a big difference between 15 and 18.
Well, that's because of the development aspect of it, right?
Right, right, right. And so
We're
by
all
this
just
point,
dying now, so we all can just
I
so that's
don't know,
probably
I
why.
don't know, I don't know. And this is my real problem where I don't want to get on here and brag. Where actually, personally, I am doing pretty well
Yeah,
lately.
good.
And I feel like the whole rest of the world is falling apart.
It's
And
true.
everyone else is terrified and miserable. And I'm just like, oh my God, what a time to finally, you know, feel like
Got
it's,
things going.
yeah. I just got to keep my head down and keep working, like, wow.
Yeah, well,
Mm.
that probably has contributed to you not feeling the weight of despair like everyone else, right?
Well, and I've literally been stuck in this house for the last decade, and it's like, just feels like stability at this point. Everyone else is apparently swimming some very choppy seas, and it's like
Yeah.
things have looked the same for me for a long time at this point. So
Well, I think it's also to do with if you're busy like doing your book and all that, right? You're not really
yeah,
seeing all that's going on, right?
right, right,
So
right. I'm
yeah,
not,
that obviously
but
has a lot to do with the feeling of dread because it's more like a future, premonition that's making them dreadful, right? The future
right.
that they see, right? So it's not something that's presently. I mean, not all, but a lot of it has to do with not present situation, but future
I'm
situation.
not immune to that by any means at all. I just am doing what I feel I can do to try and prepare for whatever, which
Yep,
is not stockpiling cans in the basement.
I gotta get a
Um,
bunker.
that's what? You get a
I said I
bunker?
gotta get a bunker.
Yeah. I mean,
So I
that's
can
the
have somewhere to
thing, is if
store
you're
my
gonna go
plans.
apocalyptic, you really have to go whole hog with it, or you just look silly, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Get a bigger bunker. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, funny.
No, I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm trying to build a little career for myself. Silly me. I
Yeah, well, we'll
don't
see,
know.
because it might all be taken over by AI. It'll be nothing but AI slot books.
Yeah,
So
yeah, 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 yeah. And that's
you'll
gonna
have to
go over
you'll have to
so
you'll have to
smoothly
do like
that
a
no
book
one will
underground in the
ever write a
bunker.
story. Huh?
You have to go underground into the bunker to have your story.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, you're right. Even if all of publishing and media is taken over by AI, right?
You can
That
still do
doesn't
it
mean that
yourself.
no, huh?
You can still distribute yourself, right? And there'll be some
Right.
area where, yeah.
People are still gonna not want that.
Well, yeah, but
Like,
does it matter what we want or what we don't want really
no,
to
but
them? No,
people
not
will
really.
do other stuff.
Yeah, you just gonna have to do other stuff and find a way
Right.
to get separate yourself from that. It just
Right.
won't be like
Like,
the
there's
mainstream
still
sort of way that's going on, like that's always been. You just have to find a
yeah.
different way. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. The idea that stories are gonna become obsolete is like absurd. So
Oh yeah.
there's that.
Like, yeah, no,
There's
but there's
that.
always been like independent publishing houses, and like there's yeah, like I think I've talked about the banned books
Oh yeah.
publishing, which publishes banned books. So there's going to always be people doing that kind of shit, anyways.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
I was just trying to joke. I was
No,
just
I know, I know, I know, I know. But it's no joke in like creative spheres, girl. Like that's not. YouTube
yeah.
keeps interrupting your stream. Just got hit with one for a learning AI at course C. Oh, that's fun. I'm sorry, Scott. It
Oh,
doesn't give me the opportunity on the phone to choose how often it puts the ads in.
yeah.
At least not that I've seen.
I'm just lucky because I'm writing like a parasite off the back of my friend when it comes to YouTube because he gave me a link to his premium as a family member. So
Very nice. Very nice.
ain't no way I'm paying fucking YouTube. Are you kidding me? Like,
Oh, I don't want to think about streaming service payments. How many we actually have in this house?
yeah, I pay for zero. I ain't
Yeah.
fucking doing
Well,
it,
I don't pay for them. Thank goodness. It's better
right?
than getting hit with those stupid ads for Medicare Advantage. If you say so, man. You say so.
Yeah,
Too
no,
bad we don't
I
get
refuse to
Medicare
pay. If
Advantage
anything, what I'll
commercials
do
in
is I'll
Canada.
pirate, or I'll be a pirate, right?
You be a pirate?
Yeah, sailing the
Mm-hmm.
ships of the seven seas. Like, fuck it. I'm not paying you fucking bastards. Like, you're not giving your workers like the money from that anyways. You're just keeping it for yourself. So fuck it. I
Oh
don't
my
fucking care.
gosh. Yeah. Again, I'm so looking forward to you seeing my new video.
Oh, I
I
can't wait.
can't believe it's still not out. This is so strange to me that there's this lag between it being finished and anyone seeing it.
Yeah. Well,
That's not
when do you think it's going to be premiering? When are you going to put it
a
on?
week from today.
That's so long.
I know. I know. On the 17th, the last Wednesday before Christmas. That isn't Christmas Eve, you know?
Yeah,
The
I
Wednesday
know.
after that is Christmas Eve, and I just thought, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I know. I gotta make sure to write it down too, so I remember because I'm joining you afterwards.
Yes, yes, that's going to be fun. That's going to
So
be
yeah, I gotta
fun.
remember that. 17.
Yeah, because I touch very firmly on income inequality, the wealth
Yeah.
inequality, the stockpiling, and I had this hilarious conversation with my web manager about whether or not Elon Musk qualifies as greedy, and I'm just like,
Oh, I remember you saying that. Yeah.
yeah, I did say that
Well, I
because
don't know.
gee,
Yeah.
how would you know that? How could you tell? I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe the like 500 trillion was it dollars? You only get that when you stomp on everyone when you're stealing from other people. Like you only get that rich when you're stealing from other people.
Well, I'm sorry. Like, give most people, your average person, the opportunity to just, I don't know, end homelessness.
Yeah.
That would be so awesome. You'd get to go down in history as the person who ended homelessness.
They don't want
Hello?
that. They want
No,
power.
no, 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 no. No, no,
Yeah.
no, no. We can't have that. We'd rather go to Mars.
Yeah.
Uh huh, uh huh, uh huh. There's a sure bet. There's a sure bet. Finally sorted the Wi Fi and headphones. Oh, awesome. Geek Girl is back.
Yay.
Yeah.
We're dunking on Elon before we go in on this.
Oh yeah, well, to be fair, it's the easiest target on Earth, right?
Yeah.
I've been dumber than a box of rocks since they yanked my thyroid 5 years ago. What? Why did they do that? Oh my goodness.
Oh my.
Why would that make you dumb? I don't. Surely it's just like brain fog, right? I mean, oh my goodness.
But with Elon, it's self-induced K-holes, but it's like,
Oh my goodness. Yes, I forgot momentarily about the amount of drugs that apparently that man does.
oh my god,
Which,
all these people are fucking high. Okay, did you see the
you know what? I don't necessarily fault people for that.
oh,
Okay,
I know.
I don't.
But no, but these smart, fucking intelligent, fucking million, billion, trillionaires are literally just like investors that are getting money from the CIA to make a lot of their tech shit. Like, there's this video that came out of an interview with Alex Kern, who is
Ah,
the CEO of Palantir.
yeah.
Yeah, so you know about all that, right? And he literally looks like he just fucking like sniffed a line of bath salts. He's like up in his chair and he's waving his arms, and the interviewer was literally like trying not to laugh. He's like, well, what the fuck? The whole audience
Wow,
is like,
no,
what?
no, I didn't see that. I don't know
And then he
about that.
tries
Let
to
me.
blame it on his autism.
Oh my God, I
But
want
he's
to see
no,
this.
obviously, yeah, he could not sit in his chair. He kept on like moving. You know how when people are really high, they move around, they can't stop. Have you seen?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
gotta
what he
write
was
that
doing.
name down because I'm not gonna help me. Hang
Oh,
on.
Alex Kurd, yeah, from Palantir. Yeah, look it up. It's going viral, that video.
How do you spell his last name?
Kern, I believe.
Okay.
One of the tech oligarch bros.
You're right.
But like the
They
guy's
are
like
all such
obviously
freak
high.
shows.
And then I forget the name of this dude, but he works in the Trump administration, and he's getting interviewed, right? And he's
Hmm.
talking about the air jets that they use in the military or whatever.
Chance of
And he's
cancer,
talking
Irish
and
jet
he's slurring.
surgery.
He's
Oh
like
my God.
drunk, like literally drunk. He's like, "This
Sorry.
is just a joke." It was like the way he was talking, like obviously sounded like he was drinking all day. And I'm like, this is the owners of you, everyone. This is who think that they have ownership of you. These fucking tech bro fuckers that are so high off their fucking kite. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's a
yeah.
joke. It is a cosmic joke.
Oh my God, and it's like King George with syphilis brain, only worse because
Yeah.
there's nobody, you know, like ready to take over. There's no like infrastructure to like set up to just in case this shit happens, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe that's what the Constitution is supposed to be for, right? Theoretically. Theoretically. I heard
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth Warren saying the other night that they have all these laws against stuff, that they need to enforce them. And then the interviewer was like, so how likely do you think it is that Congress is actually going to do any of that? And she was like, well,
Yeah, because well, he's already pulled illegal shit, and I won't be surprised if he decides no more elections. He's already set up ICE, so he's already got like a private military like that he can work with.
yeah.
And so I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't know the future, but I'm just saying that it's a
No, I
great
know.
possibility because already he's doing so many illegal things and doing whatever the fuck he wants. Like I just said,
Yeah.
he just decided, oh, it won't go through Congress, this bill, with the whole like for the whole 10 years you cannot legislate restrictions against anything AI. Oh well, I'll just sign an executive order and bypass that. So what was even the
Hmm.
point, right? So
Excuse me.
elections,
Yeah,
meh.
no. It's a free for all.
Yeah, you'll just say it's a hoax or whatever. That like you can't trust them because they are going to rig the election, so they need to not have any anymore or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
That's the likelihood that I think is going to happen. I think he's like he's going to try to be here to stay through force, but we'll see.
I feel like they wouldn't be trying so hard to project to like gerrymander stuff,
Why so?
you know? If they really didn't want to have an election, I feel like they wouldn't be so worried about the gerrymandering.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if he tries to do that, he knows that there's going to be probably a revolt. So he's like they're being very blatant, but at the same time pretending that they're following the rules. Like a lot of the
Mhm.
things he says, like with the whole scandal when it comes to Venezuela and like um missiling the fucking fishing boats and saying kill them all, and like he's like, it's like what, one day, the first day he's like, oh yeah, I won't release all the footage. The very next day, questioned by the very same interviewer, he's like, I never
Mhm.
said that. You're lying. It's a
Mhm.
hoax. Like,
Yep.
so it's really up in the air. It's hard to know what the fuck he's gonna do because he's so erratic.
He's completely demented.
Yeah, you know.
No, sincerely, like dementia. Like the man is. Not all there. Even as much as he ever was,
Yeah.
you
I mean, at
know.
least he's better. He's doing better than the rest of them who are like literally spiraling down K holes, like in the middle of fucking press conferences.
Doing what?
Spiraling down K holes for ketamine.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my god.
Like that, the footage of Elon like high as a kite with a black eye at the Oval Office is like
Oh my
one
god,
of the most
yes.
funniest
Oh
things
my
because he's like
god.
twirling his head like he's literally in a K hole.
Yeah, I don't see. I don't really necessarily personally. I'm not acquainted with that, but I am
Yeah,
acquainted
it's
with
just
what dementia
yeah,
looks like. Pretty,
yeah.
pretty. Like I used to
Well,
work in.
he's been very he's been it's well known that he does ketamine, right? He's like he pretends
Yeah.
like he's prescribed it somehow. It's for my anxiety. Okay, bro.
Wow, that's horse tranquilizer. Let's not flatter ourselves now, Elon. Calm
Right?
down.
Yes,
Wow.
he need ketamine to help him
Oh
with
my god.
anxiety. Okay.
Yeah.
Like these people, oh my god, it's so sad.
When
It's
I
so
when I
sad
first
where we are right
heard
now in the world.
like 20 years ago when I first heard somebody talking about doing horse tranquilizer recreationally, I'm like, okay, we've
Yeah.
officially crossed some line into insanityville here. Like
Yeah.
what?
I think it's ketamine, is that horse tranquilizer or is it PCP
Yeah.
that's horse tranquilizer or they're both horse tranquilizers?
What's the other one?
PCP, angel dust. I'm not too sure what they are. So I'm
Oh,
asking.
PCP is some kind of like not a hallucinogen, but it like makes you like basically psychotic.
Well, I know, but like I'm pretty sure that's horse tranquilizer, but I don't know for sure. For
I don't
sure,
know.
I'm just pretty
I
sure.
don't
So
know,
I
but
yeah, I don't know. I don't
that's
do
how
it.
ketamine was
I
introduced
just
to me. I was and like it's always I've seen it, written up that way. I know ketamine is,
okay.
but
I'll
it's just
trust you on
like,
that because I have no clue what ketamine is. I just know that
yeah,
it's
no, it
fucking.
is. It's
You
a
go through
horse
K holes when you're
tranquilizer.
on ketamine.
Yeah, yeah,
That's when
yeah,
you're
but that's
spiraling.
why.
Yeah, I
Because
don't
it has
know.
this amazing tranquilizing effect, and it's like, the K hole is supposed to be like this amazing, beautiful place, and I'm like, No.
No, that's like overdosing almost. You're like at
There
that
is
point where,
in no sense of the word and world, there is no world in which I want to experience that.
oh god, no.
Mm-mm. So, you know, I guess I was thankful for my friend in college for giving me the heads up on what that was about because no.
Spravato is ketamine. Spravato?
Oh, that's where you are? Is that a ketamine clinic?
Oh
Well,
shit, maybe
cheers,
I'm on.
I mean, I don't
Maybe.
know why. What's that all about then? Holy
Yeah, you
cow.
know. Geek girl, let us know what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Elon Musk is abusing whatever it is that he's
Oh
doing,
fuck
right?
yeah.
Because you show up at work with a black eye, like, come on, high
Well,
off
and
your
he's moving
ass.
his
Like,
head
that's
like
not how you
listening
do
to
whatever it
circus
is.
music. Like he's
Hmm?
he's moving his head, listening, looking like he's listening to circus music. Like it's so ridiculous.
Hmm. Hmm.
There before. Oh,
No,
the
I've
chronic
seen that.
pain.
I've seen that. That was a few months ago, but I saw that.
Yeah, yeah,
He, yeah, no, okay. And I'm just trying to, for anyone, anyone showing up high as a kite to work with a black eye is like, okay, you're off the rails now, right? Like,
yeah.
that's that's when someone should kindly take you aside and perform an intervention and let you know that things have gotten away from you.
Well, especially like ever like if you're also like crashing out on X, tweeting like a bunch of shit. Like I remember the feud he had with Donald before they made up. Like
Oh my
people
god.
run up him.
See, that shit I don't care about. They want to act like a bunch of petty children in public. I can't imagine
No, but it's
why.
just what it is. It's sad when you realize this is the people that control everything.
No,
Like,
yeah.
people can't
It's
control their own
so
lives.
embarrassing. It is literally world altering cringe. You haven't seen
Oh,
the
it's not an
image.
image. It's a video. It's an actual video because it was
Okay.
it
I'm
was
on
a
esketamine therapy for CPTSD and chronic pain. Okay. See, and that's probably completely different than Elon Musk just like shooting up ketamine in his free time because he wants to,
yeah,
you know?
or sniffing it, giving a little bumpity boo
Whatever
right
he
before
wants,
an Oval
whatever.
Office like interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can search a geek girl. If you search it, it's online. It's not an image. It's an actual video showing
Yeah.
him literally k-holing out. It's and Alex
Uh,
Kern. If you want to see that video, that the one's viraling right now. His interview with
yeah,
him,
I
and
can't
that
go
one
look
really
anything
looks
up
like he's
because
hyped up on like meth or speed bumps or whatever.
right, it does. It sounds like yeah. I don't know. Somebody was accusing Tucker Carlson of basically hyping himself up terribly on caffeine patches, and I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Caffeine
If that's
patches.
true, yes. And I'm like, if that's true, that would be hysterical.
I mean, I don't really
Because having too
in
much
comparison.
caffeine will
In
make you
comparison,
super
maybe he's just
hyper
tired. Like
and
I'd rather
weird.
somebody
No,
put like caffeine patches on rather than kale. And
no. I know. But like, I'm just saying that the drug habits of some of these people is just bizarre.
yeah, well, if that's even true, if that one's true, I don't know. I haven't seen videos of it, but I mean, I would really kind of like to if anyone has of any.
Yeah, no, because you know how like too much caffeine will make you jittery and jumpy and kind of aggressive.
Yeah,
Haha, but it's wild. Yeah.
it is
Anyways, I'm
wild.
just sort of sharing gossip about people I don't know because you know it's the internet. It's how we roll,
Yeah,
right?
I would like to see an interesting video of Tucker Carlson having a little jumpity Jew.
Yeah.
I won't lie.
Um.
But I mean, I haven't
Uh.
seen that any sort of video of it. So if anyone knows,
Yeah.
link it in
It was.
below.
It was. It was. It was. I mean, you could probably search that one up too. But it was. It was Kyle
Yeah.
Kulinski who was making the accusation. Who I
Oh,
watched
then I
him
don't know if
because he's
that's true.
like.
Kyle Kalinske, I don't
He's
trust him.
like. He is hilariously like bad, but
Yeah.
he's like very popular with this certain left demographic. You know.
Yeah, more neoliberal demographic than left. He's like
Right. So I watch
he's
him to kind
corporate
of keep
lights.
yeah. So I keep an eye on like that through him, you
Yeah.
know, because he's so hilariously bad. I don't know.
No, he
It's
is. He
like
is.
it's like my guilty pleasure maybe like other people watch reality TV. And I just can't he keeps on getting worse. Like he was sitting there and I'm not going to defend Bill Maher, okay? Cuz Bill Maher drives me fucking crazy too.
Yeah.
But he was sitting there calling Bill Maher a tryhard for like drinking and smoking weed on camera.
What
Meanwhile,
does
he's
that have to
sitting
do with
there.
anything now, really? He's a
Meanwhile,
comedian,
he's
isn't he?
sitting there with his frosted ass hair and a black button up under a black jacket. I'm like, dude, who's try hard? Come on.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Don't throw stones when you live in glass houses.
Right. I have to squint at you to tell that you have a jacket on. Like, come on.
Well, in the fact, also in the base, that lots of his shit is just corporate light. It's corporate light shit, like to
Yeah.
funnel you
He's
back
very
into the
corporate
system.
adjacent. It's very funny.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, maybe we should get to reading before
Yes,
people
we're
lose their
getting on an
tongue.
hour, and I definitely didn't want to go past an hour because, you know, last
Oh my
time we
goodness.
almost ran over.
Okay, well, we'll
So,
get right to it then, because I know last time I had to like launch my words out like a rocket to get
right,
through
yeah,
it
we were almost
fast
ran
enough.
out of time last time. I don't want to do that this week.
Yeah, so we're going to be reading chapter 7, Towards a Feminist Perspective of a New Society. So
Hell yeah.
subchapters are the introduction, the case, and then the case for a middle class feminist movement. Hold on, I'm going to just get up and look at it the right way for me. Basic principles and concepts towards a feminist concept of labor and alternative economy, intermediate steps, autonomy over consumption, autonomy over production, struggles for human dignity. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Wow. All right, I'm going to mute myself. Go ahead.
Yep. All right. So, towards a feminist perspective of a new society. Introduction. After the analysis of the interplay of the sexual and international division of labor within the framework of capital accumulation and the effect this has on women's life and humanity, the most burning question now is how do we get out of this situation? And what would a society be like in which women, nature, and colonies were not exploited in the name of the accumulation of ever more wealth and money? Before I try to answer these questions, I would like to clarify my position with regard to the potentialities of the international feminist movement. All right, next, the case for a middle class feminist movement. The Western feminist movement is often accused by leftists, particularly in third world countries, of being only a movement of educated middle class women and of having been unable to build up a base among working class women. Middle class women in underdeveloped countries are admonished to go rather to the slums of the big cities or to the villages and help the poor women to escape from the clutches of misery and exploitation. I have heard many urban middle class women in India saying that they themselves were privileged, that they were not oppressed, and that work for women's liberation should start by making poor women more conscious of their rights. Those middle class women who had begun to discuss women's oppression among themselves were often accused of being self centered and elitist. And often these women reacted with feelings of acute guilt for belonging to the class of the privileged women. The reasoning behind this critique of so called middle class feminism is based on the assumption that women who have to fight to secure their survival from day to day cannot afford to indulge in such luxuries as fighting for women's liberation or for human dignity. It is said that poor women need bread first before they can think of liberation. On the other hand, women who, due to their class status, have access to modern education and employment are considered to be already emancipated, particularly if they live in a liberal family atmosphere. It is obvious that such a concept of women's emancipation excludes precisely those sensitive dimensions of the patriarchal man woman relation around which the new women's movement mobilized, particularly the aspect of violence against women. But we have seen that an increase in violence against women was the issue in India and other parts of the world, which sparked off genuine feminist movements in many countries. The increase in India of dowry murder, rape, wife beating, and other anti woman tendencies brought home to urban middle class women that their so called privileged class position did not protect them against sexual violence, not even from the men of their own class or family, nor from other men, nor even from the protection of protectors of law and order, the police. In spite of all these experiences in recent years, one can still hear the argument that there is no need for women's liberation among educated urban middle class women, because these are supposed to be already liberated women or to have the means to liberate themselves. This argumentation is an example of the kind of blindness to reality which is often found among middle class people, also in third world countries. It is also an example of the economic equation of liberation with wealth, the economist, sorry, equation of liberation with wealth. Contrary to this position, I consider a feminist middle class movement, both in the overt and in the underdeveloped countries, as an absolute historical necessity. There are a number of reasons to support this position, the most obvious being the already mentioned fact that patriarchal oppression and exploitation, that sexual harassment and violence are as rampant in the middle classes everywhere as they are among workers or peasants. One could even say that they are more prevalent among this class than among peasants, where old sexual taboos still function better. The second reason is that the very privileges middle class women so often refer to as distinguishing them favorably from poor women do, in fact, expose them more to this kind of violence. They are supposed to be protected women, protected by the men of their family. Therefore, they have not learned to move about freely or and to defend themselves when they are attacked. Moreover, they are privileged housewives. That means they are isolated in their homes, have already have hardly any social network of other women or men around them to support them. They are so self sufficient in everything that they do not have to borrow from friends and neighbors. All this makes them much more vulnerable to patriarchal oppression than working class or rural women, who usually still live and work within a collective context, at least in the third world countries. In addition, the education middle class women have received has hardly equipped them to fight against male oppression. The virtues taught to girls in all educational institutions, including the family, are such that the girl loses all self reliance, all courage and independence of thought and action. As marriage and family are still seen as the natural destiny of women, education means that girls are prepared for this role of housewife and mother. This preparation for domesticity may have been supplemented by some kind of professional training, but has not been changed fundamentally. The ideology that women is basically a housewife is upheld and spread by this class. Home economics is taught to girls of this class to give this ideology a scientific perspective. All the media, particularly the cinema, foster an image of women based on this ideology. Part of this image is also the idea of romantic love, which more than anything else has fettered women in the West emotionally to patriarchal and sexist man woman relations. All this combined with the fact that the middle class woman, as an ideal type, is economically dependent on a husband as breadwinner, is enough to allow us to conclude that to be a middle class woman or housewife is not a privilege but a disaster. In most underdeveloped countries, however, the image of the middle class woman, the housewife, is still upheld consciously or subconsciously and propagated as the symbol of progress. This is done not only by explicitly bourgeois agencies and organizations like conservative women's organizations, but also by the scientific community, by politicians and administrators, and particularly by the development planners nationally and internationally, and above all, by the business community. What is more, left organizations too, which want to spread class consciousness among workers and peasants, have basically no other image of women in their mind when they work among women. Not only are their cadres mainly middle class men and women, but also the issues they consider as specific women's issues, child health, family planning, housework, are related to this image. We have seen that even in socialist countries which underwent revolutionary change in the property relations, the middle class image of women as a dependent housewife has been at the core of the new economic policies of creating a subsidiary or informal sector. The privileges of middle class women are not only that they are domesticated, isolated, dependent on a man, emotionally fettered and weakened, and tied down to an ideology that totally objectifies them. All this is combined with the fact that they, as housewives, have to spend the money their husbands earn. They have become, at least in the urban areas, the main agents of domestic consumption, who provide the necessary market for the commodities produced. It is this class of women which, to a large extent, are the subjects and objects of consumerism. In the West, it is a common phenomenon that women compensate for their many frustrations by going on a shopping spree. But also, middle class women in poor countries follow the same pattern. African, Asian, or Latin American urban middle class women follow more or less the same lifestyle and model of consumption. A look at African or Indian women's magazines suffices to show us how middle class women are mobilized as consumers. National and international capitalists have a keen interest in upholding and spreading this image of women, and the model of consumption that goes along with it as the symbol of progress. Where would the national and multinational corporations sell their cosmetics, detergents, soaps, synthetic fibers, plastics, fast food, baby food, milk powder, pills, etc., if middle class women would not provide the market? Therefore, it is the middle class woman as housewife, mother, and sex symbol who is constantly mobilized to follow all fashions and fads, who is the one of the main items in the advertising strategy of all marketing agencies. As Elizabeth Kroll has remarked, the image of this woman has also made its appearance on the billboards of Peking, where women in the model work is the model worker, has been replaced by women the consumer of cosmetics, television, washing machines, toothpaste, watches, modern cooking pots. The new Chinese woman on these posters is curling her straight hair, using lipstick, and beautifying her eyes. The protests of the Women's Federation against this kind of advertising had little effect, because this image of women is intimately bound up with the growing commercial interests and connections the Chinese government is establishing with the West. Thus, the Western middle class woman as consumer appears as the symbol of progress also in the People's Republic of China. Western feminists are challenging this image of women and the social reality behind it, not only because they have realized the gigantic bluff behind this image of the happy woman in the face of so much direct and indirect brutality against women, but also because many are realizing that consumerism is the drug by which women and men are made to accept otherwise inhumane and increasingly destructive conditions of life. The new needs created by industry in its desperate effort to keep the growth model going are all the type of addictions. The satisfaction of these addictions is no longer contributing to more happiness and human fulfillment, but to more destruction of the human essence. In the early 1970s, the women's movement, together with other protest movements, may still have believed that now, since we have enough of everything, the women's question could be solved by a process of simple redistribution and the eventual realization of the promises of the bourgeois revolutions. But now it is evident that it is the very overabundance of commodities and the paradigm behind this overproduction which destroy the environment as well as human life and happiness. Moreover, the sadistic, cynical women hatred of the whole capitalist patriarchal civilization is so openly demonstrated today that feminists can no longer have the illusion that women's liberation will be possible within the context of this social paradigm. This realization is not yet very widespread among middle class feminists in underdeveloped countries, but I think they too have grounds enough not to feel apologetic about the existing and growing feminist movement in their class. Such a movement is indeed necessary if urban women are to defend themselves against the growing anti-women tendencies we can observe worldwide. But it is also necessary that middle class women themselves begin to destroy the myth, the images, the social values which make them a false symbol of progress. If middle class women in India, for instance, begin to question such patriarchal values as virginity or the ideals of self sacrificing womanhood propagated by mythology, like Sita or Savitri or the modern housewife ideology, then they do not only contribute to their own liberation, but also to the liberation of working class and peasant women. Because as symbols of progress, these images of women, these myths and values are now brought to all Indian villages by the media, the cinema, the educational system, as well as by developmentalists, activists, and social workers. With the spread of the middle class housewife ideology into the rural and slum uh, areas, the problem is not only its intrinsic devaluation of the woman, but also that for most poor rural and urban women, these images will never become reality. And yet these images exert a great fascination on them, and many may try too desperately to come up with the standard of these modern middle class women. With TV also being available to many rural areas, American TV productions like Dallas or local ones imitating them will reach all corners. It is therefore necessary that urban middle class women, particularly those who want to work among poor rural and urban women in third world countries, begin to begin to criticize the ideology and reality of middle class womanhood. The existence of a strong middle class feminist movement with a clear perspective is a safeguard against the further propagation of the false image of woman, the housewife, and consumer as a model for women's liberation and progress. Without such a movement and without the feminist critique of the middle class woman as the bearer of a happier future, women activists who work among poor women will subconsciously transport this image to women who have no use for it. Excuse me. There is yet another aspect. Without a radical feminist critique of the middle class ideal of womanhood, with its specific national and cultural manifestations, there is the danger that middle class women, even if they are genuinely committed to women's liberation and to liberation of all oppressed and exploited, will remain blind to the truly progressive and human elements to be found among the so called backward classes and communities with regard to women. These may be elements of a tradition which has not yet been totally subsumed under patriarchy, remnants of matriarchal or matrilineal traditions, or there may be pockets of women's power which these may derive from their still communal and collective way of living and working, or even from their long tradition of resistance to male class and colonial oppression. As Christine White has observed with regard to the Vietnamese communist leaders, their blindness regarding the matriarchal traditions in Vietnam and the almost exclusive concentration on feudal and Confucian traditions is a manifestation of the middle class preoccupation with patriarchal civilization. As the European bourgeois try to emulate the lifestyle of the aristocracy, yeah, you know what I mean, aristocracy, there we go. The working classes have imitated the bourgeoisie. The same process of emulation and imitating is taking place between third world and first world countries. In this whole process, all national and local traditions whereby women had or still have some kind of autonomy and strength are defined as backward, primitive, savage. It cannot be in women's interest to contribute to this destruction of women's history. A feminist middle class movement could draw strength, inspiration, and guidance from the history and the culture of these so called backward women. Stop, Kitty. This is all the more urgent and necessary since the myth of man the breadwinner, the sun around which the middle class women move like a planet, is rapidly being exploded. Increasing evidence is emerging that marriage and family are no longer an economic life insurance for women, that increasing numbers of men are shunning the responsibility for women and children among the educated middle classes as well. Therefore, middle class women would do well to go to their poorer sisters and to learn from them how to survive under these circumstances and how to survive with dignity. Okay, next. Just give me 2 seconds. I gotta open the window so the cat will stop meowing. Yeah, look outside the window. All right, moving on to basic principles and concepts. It is easier to know what one does not want than to know what one wants. To formulate a feminist perspective for a future society is a formidable task, which no single individual can accomplish. Furthermore, there is no ideological or theoretical center in the women's movement which could assume the task of formulating a consistent theory, strategy, and tactics. The international feminist movement is a truly anarchic movement in which any woman who feels committed and has something to say can contribute to the formulation of the vision of the future society. Some consider this as a weakness of the movement, others see it as a strength. But whatever position one may take, the fact remains that the feminist movement does not work otherwise. This is true at least for all the groups, organizations, and individual women who do not subordinate the women's question to any other, supposedly more general question, who, in other words, want to maintain the autonomy of the movement. The following thoughts have, therefore, to be understood as one such contribution to our common effort to work out a concrete feminist utopia of a new society. The perspective I want to present does not claim to be comprehensive, although I shall try to start from a consideration of the totality of the social reality in which we live. Nor is it all new and original. Many ideas have been expressed already by others, but I shall try to draw some conclusions from our struggles and the experiences, studies, reflections, and quarrels of the recent past, as well as from the history of the first women's movement. It is an effort to learn from our history. I feel that unless we do this now, the rollback tendencies observable everywhere today may succeed in again it's destroying the history of our struggles and ideas. What is more, they
Really
threaten to
quick
destroy.
though.
What?
Sorry. Isn't that fascinating how first she had to like explain why she deserves to be a feminist?
Right?
Basically, that's so
Well, it's mostly obviously for her, but I
frustratingly.
think it's mostly for other middle class women, right? Because
Yeah, yeah. But
they do
like,
get told a lot of the time, like, oh, it's a privilege. You know how you hear that all the time, right?
and like, why shouldn't we use our privilege for that?
Right?
Yeah. But I just that's what that feels like all of a sudden since she's now saying, okay, and here we are, we're going to talk about it now, and I'm just like, oh boy, you had to apologize. You had to apologize for talking about it first. Of course,
Almost, yeah.
of course,
Um,
because it's how we always do. It's so frustrating that it's so everywhere. I'm sorry. Go
I
on.
know. Yeah, that's okay. What is more, they threaten to destroy the very essence of what so far has been understood as human. To develop a new perspective requires first that we step back, pause, and take a panoramic view of the reality that surrounds us. That means we have to start from a worldview that attempts, as far as possible, to comprise the totality of our reality. Our analysis has shown that the capitalist patriarchal paradigm of man the hunter, which has shaped our present reality, is characterized at all levels by dualistic and hierarchical structural divisions, which are the basis of exploitative polarization between parts of the whole, between humans and nature, man and woman, different classes and different peoples, but also between different parts of the human body, for example, between head and the rest, rationality and emotionality. On the level of ideas, these dualistic divisions are found in the hierarchical evaluation and polarization of the concepts of nature and culture, mind and matter, progress and retrogression, leisure and labor, etc. I call these divisions colonizing divisions. According to this paradigm, the totality is not only divided up in this manner, but, as was said before, the relationship established between the two sides is a dynamic, hierarchical, and exploitative one, in which one side progresses at the expense of the other. This cannot be otherwise, since the world's this cannot be otherwise, since the world is finite, at least the world in which we all live. However, the white man, the incarnation of the capitalist patriarch, does not accept the finiteness of reality. He wants to be like God, almighty, eternal, omniscient. So he has invented the idea of infinite progress, of an infinite evolution from the lower, more primitive to ever higher and more complex levels of being. This idea, of course, is rooted materially in the historical experiences of conquest of patriarchal nomadic peoples, mainly like the Jews and the Aryans. Judaic and Christian theologies have given the necessary religious sanction to the idea. Ah, man. The right to dominate and subordinate nature and to unlimited expansion.
Hey,
The
sorry.
scientific
Geek Girl wants to know the title of the book you're reading.
oh, it's right here. It's Maria Mies, and it's Patriarchy and Accumulation on a World Scale. Um, Women in the International Division of Labor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome sauce.
The scientific revolution in Europe in the 15th and 16th centuries only secularized this religious idea. Since the finiteness of human beings and of the earth, however, could not be thought or speculated away, and since the principles of equality and freedom were formulated with a claim to universal applicability, the retrogression of the other side, pushed into the dark, could not be simply interpreted as God ordained. It was interpreted as a lagging behind, as a lower stage of evolution. In fact, the idea of evolutionary change became the centerpiece in the idea of progress of the advanced peoples of the West. They became the symbol of progress for all backwards peoples, in the same way as men became the symbol of progress for women. We have seen, however, that evolutionary progress for the colonized, namely their accession to the level of the oppressors, is a logical impossibility within a finite world. Yet the illusion that they will eventually make it as held up by the ever progressing advanced side. This progress, however, is more than ever based on the progressive destruction of the foundations of life, nature, of human relationships, and particularly of women. It is indeed a production of death. This is patriarchy. This is particularly true of the latest technological inventions of the white man: atomic energy, microelectronics, and above all, genetic engineering, biotechnology, and space research. None of these so called technological revolutions will be able to solve any of the big social problems based on exploitation. They will rather contribute to the further destruction of nature and the human essence. In recent years, feminists and many others have begun to articulate their radical rejection of the paradigm of the white man, or man the hunter. In this, they reject particularly the dualistic divisions between this model and search to constitute a holistic approach, first to our bodies, then to reality at large. Many feminists, in their search for a new holistic paradigm, limit their analysis and their new perspective to the cultural or ideological phenomena, or the sphere of the worldview of or religion. Important though this may be, it is not sufficient to come to a realistic and politically concrete concept of a new society, a concept which would include the material life of the majority of the people in the world. To do so means not only to reject the colonial divisions in the realm of ideas, but those which exist in material reality, which shape our everyday life and the world at large. Thus, a feminist perspective has to start with some basic principles which can guide political action at all levels. The following seem to me the most basic. 1. Rejection and abolition of the principle of colonizing dualistic divisions between men and women, different peoples and classes, man and nature, spirit and matter, based on exploitation for the sake of ever expanding commodity production and capital accumulation. 2. This implies the creation of non exploitative, non hierarchical, reciprocal relationships between parts of our body, people and nature, women and men, different sections and classes of one society, different peoples. 3. A necessary consequence of non exploitative relations with ourselves, nature, other human beings, and other peoples or nations will be the regaining of autonomy over our bodies and our lives. This autonomy means, first and foremost, that we cannot be blackmailed or forced to do things which are against human dignity in exchange for the means of our subsistence or our life. Autonomy, in this sense, should not be understood individualistically and idealistically, as it often is by feminists, because no single woman in our autonomized society is able to preserve her autonomy. Indeed, it is the antithesis of autonomy if it is understood in this narrow egotistic sense. Because the enslavement of the consumers under capitalist conditions of generalized commodity production is brought about precisely by the illusion that each individual can buy her or his independence from other human beings and social relations by the purchase of commodities. Autonomy understood as freedom.
Wow.
Yeah, good, eh?
Love that.
Autonomy understood as freedom from coercion and blackmail regarding our lives and bodies can be brought about only by collective effort in a decentralized, non-hierarchical way. Okay, Number 4, a rejection of the idea of infinite progress and acceptance of the idea that our human universe is finite, our body is finite, the earth is finite. 5, the aim of all work and human endeavor is not a never ending expansion of wealth and commodities, but human happiness, as the early socialists had seen it, or the production of life itself. If one tries to translate these more or less abstract principles into historical and everyday practice, one perceives immediately that the basic concepts around which everyday life is organized are formidable obstacles in the realization of these principles. The concept which, more than any others, has shaped life in capitalist patriarchy is the concept of labor. For a feminist perspective, the concept of labor, prevalent in all capitalist and socialist societies, has to be changed radically. From this changed concept will follow a change of work organization, of the sexual division of labor, of the products of the relation between work and non-work, of the division between manual and mental work, of the relation between human beings and nature, of the relation to our bodies. With regard to the concept of labor prevalent in our societies, there is no qualitative difference between capitalist societies and socialist societies. In both, labor is considered a necessary burden, which has to be reduced as far as possible by the development of productive forces or technology. Freedom, human happiness, the realization of our creative capacities, friendly, unalienated relations with other human beings, the enjoyment of nature, of children's play, etc., all these are excluded from the realm of work and are possible only in the realm of non work, that is, in leisure time. As necessary labor is defined as that labor which is required for the satisfaction of basic human needs, food, clothing, shelter, a reduction of this labor by machines is then the aim. It is assumed that the other higher needs mentioned above, or just mentioned previously, freedom, human happiness, culture, etc., cannot be satisfied at the same time as one performs the labor necessary for the basic maintenance of one's life. Progress is defined as a progressive reduction of necessary labor time and an increase of leisure time, when people can at last fulfill their higher needs. The capitalist, as well as the socialist utopia, is one in which machines, such as computers, automats, artificially cloned work slaves, do all necessary labor, and in which people can indulge in consumptive and creative activities. Before attempting to specify a feminist concept of labor, it may be useful to have yet another look at the Marxist concept of labor because, in contradistinction to the capitalists, labor for socialists is not only the necessary curse or burden, but also the motive that leads mankind to the transition to the true communist society. Let us see whether the concept of labor used by Marx is adequate to fulfill these promises. In Des Capital, Marx writes, quote, in fact, the realm of freedom actually begins only where labor, which is determined by necessity and mundane considerations, ceases. Thus, in the very nature of things, it lies beyond the sphere of actual material production. Just as the savage must wrestle with nature to satisfy his wants, to maintain and reproduce life, so must civilized man. And he must do so in all possible modes of production. With his development, this realm of physical necessity expands as a result of his wants, but at the same time, the forces of production which satisfy these wants also increase. Freedom in this field can only consist in socialized men, associated producers, rationally regulating their interchange with nature, bringing it under their common control, instead of being ruled by it by the blind forces of nature, and achieving this with the least expenditure of energy and under conditions most favorable to and worthy of their human nature. But it nonetheless still remains a realm of necessity. Beyond it begins that development of human energy, which is an end in itself, the true realm of freedom, which, however, can blossom forth only with this realm of necessity as its basis. The shortening of the working day is its basic prerequisite. End quote. The most the most important idea in this passage is that the realm of freedom will not come before labor, which is determined by necessity, ceases. Therefore, the goal of all economic, scientific, and political endeavor is the shortening of the working day as the prerequisite of the advent of the realm of freedom, or as Alfred Schmidt writes, quote, the problem of human freedom is reduced by Marx to the problem of free time, end quote. Shortening of the time necessary for the production of the basic requirements to maintain our physical existence will still remain a main social goal when private property and commodity production have been abolished. Marx writes about this in Grundrisse, quote, if we presuppose production in temporal determination naturally remains essential. The less time society needs to produce wheat, cattle, etc., the more time is gained for other kinds of production, material and intellectual, just as in the case of the single individual who all-round development, enjoyment, and activity depend on the amount of time saved. All economics ultimately reduces itself to economy in time, end quote. The reduction of socially necessary labor time and the jump to the realm of freedom are brought about by two processes. One, the ever increasing development of the forces of production of science and technology. Two, the abolition of private property, of class society, the socialization of means of production, and the socialization or association of their production. The first process will not only lead to a reduction in necessary labor time, but also to the rationalization of the associated producers themselves, whose domination over the blind forces of nature is thus immensely increased. This rationalization not only means domination and control over external nature, but even more importantly, suppression of one's instincts, of mere nature or blind animal nature in man. The colonization of this lower nature in man is both a prerequisite for and a consequence of the expanding development of science and technology, or as Marxists put it, the forces of production. Whereas for Engels, the jump to the realm of freedom is achieved with the abolition of private property and continuing development of science, Marx is more skeptical because he does not expect that, in spite of the socialization of the means of production and the highest degree of technological progress, labor, also as a burden, can be totally abolished, even in communism. Because, as we saw in Chapter 2, labor, according to Marx, is not only a burden, the weight of which is historically determined by the development of productive forces, but also independent of history, a human interaction with nature, the everlasting nature imposed condition of human existence, and therefore it is independent of every social form that exists, or rather is common to every such form. In this respect, Marx was more of a realist and materialist than Engels, but both men were optimistic and idealistic with regard to the potentiality of science and technology to transform society, particularly to abolish the divisions of labor, which they considered in their early writings the main cause of man's alienation from himself. The social division of labor by class society, the division of labor in the capitalist work process, and the alienation of the worker from his product, and the division of labor between head and hand. The communist utopia is one in which socially necessary labor has been reduced to almost zero, where man has abundant leisure time for his self-realization and the human development of his rich individuality. In German ideology, in German ideology, they write, quote, for as soon as the distribution of labor comes into being, each man has a particular exclusive sphere of activity, which is forced upon him and from which he cannot escape. He is a hunter, a fisherman, a shepherd, or a critical critic, and must remain so if he does not want to lose his means of livelihood. While in communist society, where nobody has one exclusive sphere of activity, but each can become accomplished in any branch he wishes, society regulates the general production and thus makes it possible for me to do one thing today and another tomorrow, to hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, or rear cattle in the evening, criticize after dinner, just as I have a mind without ever becoming hunter, fisherman, shepherd, or critic. Marx, end quote. Marx and Engels expected the realization of this utopian vision of a communist society, in which women seem to be absent, by the way, from the development of the forces of production, the abolition of private property, and the socialization of production. In Marx's later works, however, the idyllic picture of how communist man passes his day becomes blurred, As Alfred Schmidt observes, according to Marx, the process of replacement of human labor by machines and automats will be relatively independent of social organization. Under communism, this process will rather be accelerated than slowed down or stopped. Quote, Marx emphasized in Grundrisse that the ceaseless transformation of nature in industry also proceeds under socialist conditions. The unity of knowledge and transformation of nature realized on a large scale in industry should in future become a still more determining feature of process of production. He had in mind the total automation of industry, which would change the worker's role more and more into that of the technical overseer and regulator, end quote. The total permeation of the industrialized labor process by science, the increased shortening of labor time, the development of automation eventually results in making the worker as the main agent of production obsolete. Quote, he stands beside the process of production instead of being its main agent. In this metamorphosis, it is neither direct labor done by man himself, nor the time he takes over it, but rather the appropriation of his own general productive powers, his understanding of nature, and his mastery of the latter through the agency of his existence as a member of society. In one phrase, the development of the social individual, which now appears as the great foundation of production and wealth. End quote. I have elaborated on the Marxist concept of labor, the Marxist views on technological progress, and the communist vision of a true society, because these ideas are shared by most socialists, as well as by many feminist socialists. Particularly the view that unlimited progress of science and technology is a kind of law of nature or history, and will be the main force to transform a human society, and social relations has become a new faith with many people. Even people who are seriously looking for an alternative to destructive capitalism still base their blueprint of a new society on the wonders of technological innovation. Thus, for Andre Gorz, the time has now come for a straight march into the Marxist paradise because, with microelectronics, computers, and automation, necessary labor can almost be reduced to zero. For Gorz, the only problem remaining is to distribute the rest of this labor among the people and to move forward to the realization of the Marxist paradise, in which people's main problem will be to fill their leisure time with creative activities. What Gorz and others systematically exclude is the underside of paradise, or hell. This paradise of the brave new world is based on continued imperialist exploitation of external colonies and of women, the internal colony of white man. These will be the people who still produce life, and to a large extent in unfree, housewifized forms of labor in the so-called informal sector. Because in spite of the complete automation and computerization, people still have bodies which need food and human care. And this does not come from machines. As Claudia van Werloff has pointed out, this paradise is not for women, but is based on women's ongoing exploitation on a worldwide basis. It is the last desperate effort of white man to realize his technocratic utopia based on domination of nature, women, and colonies. The conflict with Alfred Schmidt observes with regard to Marx's optimism about the quantitative development of a rich human individuality as the main aim of communism has been solved by modern left and alternative theoreticians in this way that the colonies, nature, women, exotic peoples, are kept in bondage by Homo economicus and Homo scientificus, so that he is not totally cut off from nature, the earth, his sensuality, the everlasting condition of all human existence and happiness. As long as this base is secured, he could go on with his unlimited development of productive forces for the unlimited satisfaction of his unlimited wants, or rather addictions. For this man, the realm of freedom is indeed around the corner, but at the expense of slavery of women and the third world. So this is why they're so similar, right? Is because they have this same sort of theoretical basis of like blinded to the exploitation that gives them the ability to have this technological process and unlimited free time kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, it's all patriarchy, right?
Yeah. Yep. Just give me 2 seconds because my phone made a beep, and I'm gonna have to plug it in because it's dying. It
Do what
doesn't
you
take
gotta do,
long.
honey.
Yeah. I might have to actually take this off. Ugh, the light. Can you still see? Yeah, you can still see fine.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to take the light off, I would just want to know if you can still see. Should be fine.
Okay.
Okay. Come on. Okay. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna stay there. No, hold on. Okay. Trying to get this to stay. No. Okay, hold on. Damn it. I need more. Oh, shit. A stupid thing.
Is it okay?
Yeah, just that I don't have a long enough cord to get this plugged in, and it's like too heavy. So hold on.
Dang.
I
You're
gotta get a
good.
box. 2 seconds.
Go for it.
Um, all right. Get crafty with it.
Cute for a person. Yeah, this is Duncan Scott. This is our puppy.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
See. Okay, that should be good. You can still sort of see without the light, right? It's not too dark. No? Okay. All right, so now we are going on towards the feminist concept of labor. It is obvious from our previous discussion that the development of a feminist concept of labor has to begin with the rejection of the distinction between socially necessary labor and leisure, and the Marxist view that self-realization, human happiness, freedom, autonomy, the realm of freedom can be achieved only outside the sphere of necessity and of necessary labor, and by a reduction or abolition of the latter. 1. If we take as our model of a worker, not the white male industrial wage worker, irrespective of whether he works under capitalist or socialist conditions, but a mother, we can immediately see that her work does not fit into the Marxist concepts. For her, work is always both a burden as well as a source of enjoyment, self fulfillment, and happiness. Children may give her a lot of work and trouble, but this work is never totally alienated or dead. Even when children turn out to be a disappointment for the mother, when they eventually leave her or feel contempt for her, as in fact many do in our society, the pain she suffers at all this is still more human than the cold indifference of the industrial worker or engineer versus his products, the commodities he produces and consumes. The same unity of work as a burden and work as enjoyment can be found among peasants whose production is not yet totally subsumed under commodity production and the compulsions of the market. The peasants who have to work from dawn to dusk during the harvesting season, for instance, feel the burden of work more than anybody else in their bodies and in their muscles. But in spite of the hardships of this work, it is never only a curse. I remember the times of haymaking or harvesting on our small subsistence farm in my childhood as times of extreme labor intensity for everybody, mother, children, father, and as times of the greatest excitement, enjoyment, social interaction. I found the same phenomenon among poor peasant and agricultural laborer women in India during the season of rice transplantation. Although in this case the work had to be done for an exploiting landlord, the combination of work and enjoyment of labor and leisure was still there. Moreover, this time of intense work was also the time sorry, was also the time of the most pronounced cultural activity of the women. During the collective work processes in the fields, they sang an endless number of ballads which helped them to bear the burden of work more easily. And in the evening, after the evening meal, they danced and sang together till late. Anyone who has had an opportunity to observe the work process of people involved in non market orientated subsistence production will have found this interplay of work as necessity and burden, and work as a basic source of enjoyment and self expression. The same is true for the work of the artisan or the handicrafts production, as long as this work is not yet fully subsumed under the compulsions of the market. The same is true for the work of the. Oh, sorry, I already read that part. The main characteristics of the work process described is that they are all connected with the direct production of life or of use values. A feminist concept of labor has to be orientated towards the production of life as the goal of work, and not the production of things and of wealth, of which the production of life is then a secondary derivative. The production of immediate life in all its aspects must be the core concept for the development of a feminist concept of work. 2. Apart from the unity of labor as a burden and labor as expression of our human nature and as enjoyment, a feminist concept of labor cannot be based on the Marxist and capitalist economics of time. The shortening of the daily labor time or of the labor time within a lifespan cannot be a method for the realization of a feminist utopia. Women have by now realized that the reduction of time spent in commodity production does not lead to more freedom for women, but rather to more housework, more non wage work in household production, more relationship or emotional work, more consumption work. The vision of a society in which almost all time is leisure time and labor time is reduced to a minimum is for women in many respects a vision of horror, not only because housework and non wage work have never been included in the labor that is supposed to be reduced by machines, but also because it will be women who will have to restore the then idle man a sense of reality, meaning, and life. A feminist concept of labor has, therefore, to be orientated towards a different concept of time in which time is not segregated into portions of burdensome labor and portions of supposed pleasure and leisure, but in which times of work and times of rest and enjoyment are alternating and interspersed. If such a concept and such an organization of time prevail, the length of the working day is no longer very relevant. Thus, a long working day and even a lifetime full of work will not be felt as a curse, but a source of human fulfillment and happiness. Such a new concept of time cannot, of course, be brought about unless the existing sexual division of labor is abolished. Such a change, however, will not come, as some women expect, by a reduction of the working day or week through rationalization and automation. The men whose weekly or daily or life labor time has already been shortened through modern technology do not share more of their housework, but rather indulge in more drinking, more TV watching, or in other male leisure time activities like watching video films or playing computer games. The whole reduction of the workday since the times of Marx and Engels has nowhere resulted in a change of the sexual division of labor, has not resulted in men feeling more responsible for housework, children, or the production of life. 3. The third element which has to be stressed in a feminist concept of labor is the maintenance of work as a direct and sensual interaction with nature, with organic matter and living organisms. In the Marxist concept of labor, this sensual bodily interaction with nature, human nature as well as external nature, is largely eliminated. More and more machines are inserted between the human body and nature. These machines are, of course, supposed to give man dominance and power over wild, blind nature, but at the same time, they reduce his own sensuality. With the elimination of labor as necessity and burden, the potential of the human body for enjoyment, for sensuality, and for erotic and sexual satisfaction is also eliminated. As our body will ever be the base for our enjoyment and happiness, the destruction of sensuality resulting from the interaction with machines rather than with living organisms will only result in a pathological search for an idealized nature. In a desperate effort to restore this lost sensuality to the male body, the female body is mystified as both pure or base nature, and as the goal of fulfillment of all desires. The expropriation and eventual destruction of human sensuality by modern machinery is nowhere more pronounced than the cult of the computer, which at present can be observed everywhere. It is a typical male cult, and meant for men whose sensuality has already been largely destroyed by the fact that technological progress has placed them beside the process of production instead of being its main agent. Far from leading to man's appropriation of his own general productive powers, His understanding of nature, his mastery of the latter, computer technology is, indeed, destroying all productive human powers, all understanding of nature, and in particular, all capacity for sensual enjoyment. I consider this one of the reasons why violence against women is increasing in industrialized societies. Men who no longer feel their body and the work process itself try to regain some bodily and emotional feeling by attacking women. This is also the reason why horror and hard porn films are among the best sellers of the video industry. Their main consumers are men, many of them unemployed or in computerized or service jobs in industry. 4. Direct and sensual interactions with nature in the work process is not yet sufficient, however. This could also be realized through some sport or hobby, and indeed, the architects of modern society are visualizing an increase of such physical activities as a kind of therapy for people who have been made redundant as workers through automation. But how long will hobbies and sports provide a sense of purpose and meaning to people, even if their daily requirements are provided for by the welfare state? A feminist concept of labor has to make that work retains its sense of purpose, its character of being useful and necessary for the people who do it and those around them. This also means that the products of this labor are useful and necessary and not just some luxuries of or superfluous trash, as are most of the handicrafts made today by women in income generating activities in third world countries. 5. This sense of usefulness, necessity, and purpose with regard to work and its products, however, can only be restored as the division and the distance between production and consumption are gradually abolished. Today, the division and alienation are, as we have seen, global. Third world women produce what they do not know, and first world women consume what they do not know. Within a feminist perspective, production of life is the main goal of human activity. This necessitates that the processes of production of necessary things and processes of consumption are again brought together, because only by consuming the things which we produce can we judge whether they are useful, meaningful, and wholesome, whether they are necessary or superfluous. And only by producing what we consume can we know how much time is really necessary for the things we want to consume, what skills are necessary, what knowledge is necessary, and what technologically is necessary. The abolition of the wide division between production and consumption does not mean, of course, that every individual or even every small community must produce all they need and have to find everything in their ecological surroundings, but it does imply that the production of life is based on a certain autarkic relation of a certain community of people of a specific region, the size of which has to be determined on the basis of the principles spelt out at the beginning of this section. Goods and services imported into such a region should be the result of non-exploitative relations to nature, women, and other peoples. The potential bringing together of production and consumption will drastically reduce the possibilities for this exploitation and largely increase the potential for resistance to economic and political blackmail and coercion. Oh, kitty, stop it. Don't go near the box. Move. Get away. 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 Get out. Sorry. All right, so an alternative economy. We're moving on to the next. It is obvious that such a concept of work transcends the framework of an economy based on ever expanding growth of monetary revenue and of ever expanding forces of production in terms of high technological development. As this paradigm has led to the overdevelopment of some nations and to the underdevelopment of women, nature, and colonies, the concept of work orientated towards the production of life requires a reversal and a transcendence of this framework. We may not yet be in a position to present a fully worked out alternative framework for an economy not based on the exploitation of nature, women, and colonies, but there are already quite a number of important features of such a society, spelled out in recent years by people who understood that overdevelopment is not only damaging for people in Asia, Latin America, and Africa, but is also destroying the very essence of human life in the centers of overdeveloped societies itself. The first basic requirement of an alternative economy is a changeover, both in the overdeveloped and in the underdeveloped societies, from dependency for their basic subsistence needs, food, clothing, shelter, from economies outside their national boundaries towards greater autarky. Only, only societies which are to a large extent self sufficient in the production of these basic necessities can maintain themselves free from political blackmail and hunger. And this self sufficiency in food is the first requirement. Malcolm, Malcolm Caldwell has shown that such self sufficiency in food as well as in energy would be quite possible in Britain with the available cultivatable land and its present population. It would equally be possible in any other of the overdeveloped countries of Europe or North America. But what is more, if the governments of these overdeveloped countries had not bribed their working people by importing cheap food, cheap clothes, cheap raw materials, etc., from so called cheap labor countries, these countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America could all be self sufficient in food, clothing, shelter, etc. It is strange that people in the West have already forgotten that all the underdeveloped countries are not only rich in natural and human resources, but were also all self sufficient societies before the conquest of white man. If the protein food imported to Europe from third world countries in the form of animal feed to produce milk, seas, butter, mountains, etc., was used to feed the actual local people, there would be no hunger in any of these regions. In 1977, 90% of the protein concentrates British farmers fed to their livestock was imported from underdeveloped countries. It is also well known that the energy efficiency, the ratio between energy used to produce food and the energy gained by the consumption of this food, is lowest in the overdeveloped countries, with their food mainly produced by agro industry. Thus, the energy efficiency of greenhouse lettuce is only 0.0023 of white sliced bread, 0.525, whereas local Mexican corn grown without the use of machinery has an energy efficiency factor of 30.6. A largely autarkic economy could necessarily lead towards a change in the existing exploitative and non reciprocal international division of labor, a contraction of world trade, and of export oriented production, both in the overdeveloped countries, whose economies are dependent on the export of industrial products, and underdeveloped countries who have to pay back their credits by exports of mainly primary goods. A further consequence of a more or less self sufficient economy would be a drastic reduction of all non productive work. In a sense, I use the term, particularly in the tertiary sector, a change in the composition of the workforce with a movement away from employment in industries towards employment in agriculture. If people of a given region want to live mainly by the natural and labor resources available in that region, then it follows that many more people will have to do necessary manual labor in food production. Within such a finite region, people would also be careful not to destroy the very ecology on which balance the survival of the dependents by use of too much agricultural chemical products and too much machinery, which again uses up too much energy. Therefore, as Malcolm Caldwell says, with reduced inputs of inanimate energy, an increase in production could only come from an increase in muscle power. Instead of capital intensive farming, there would be labor intensive farming. It would be not concentrated in big agribusiness farm factories, but in decentralized small farms. With such a change of the international division of labor, the division of labor between agricultural and industry, with agriculture oriented towards food self sufficiency, many of these elements specified with regard to a changed feminist concept of labor would already be fulfilled. For example, the restoration of labor as necessary and meaningful of its direct contact with that nature or living organisms, possibly also a different notion of labor time, the narrowing down of the gap between production and consumption, and more autonomy of producers, consumers over what they produce and consume. Within such an economy, there would be no room and no use for the production of unnecessary things and sheer waste, as it is the case with the growth model, because production decisions would be based on a realistic assessment of natural, ecological, and human resources, as well as on people's true needs for a human life. It would lead away from the creation and feeding of ever more destructive addictions, which at the present juncture are the only way by which capital can still hope to expand its markets in the over in the junk sorry over markets in the overdeveloped regions. It would give people back more autonomy over their lives and the production of life. As Caldwell points out, this radical restructuring of the economy is not only a beautiful dream or a case of exhortatory politics, but will increasingly become a necessity. particularly for workers who have been made redundant for good by the rapid development of high tech and automation. He reminds us that already in 1976, massive unemployment in Italy led to a big movement of workers back to the land. About 100,000 workers returned to farming. A similar movement back to the land took place 2 years ago in India during the strike of the textile workers in Bombay, which lasted almost a year. Although at present the movement back to the land may still appear as an option mainly open to the frustrated urban middle classes, growing poverty in the metropolitan centers, particularly among foreign workers, the youth, and above all among women, will transform the romanticism of many alternative land freaks into a necessary survival strategy. Such people may be the first to realize that one cannot eat money and that food does not grow out of computers. Most ecologists and people who are searching for a radical alternative to the destructive society we live in would agree with the pre-mentioned ideas. So also would many feminists. But they would discover that the brief description of an alternative economy spelt out by Caldwell is again silent about the non-reciprocal exploitative divisions of labor between the sexes. The perspective of a relative autarkic economy based on non-exploitative relations to the ecology, other peoples, people within a region, on small decentralized units of production and consumption for is for feminists not broad enough if it does not start with a radical change of sexual division of labor. In most ecological writings, however, the women question is either not mentioned at all or it is simply added on to a long list of other more urgent, more general issues. I have already said in the first chapter that this adding on will no longer do if we want to change the existing inhumane man woman relation. The conception of an alternative economy is therefore not only incomplete without the goal of transcending the patriarchal sexual division of labor, it will rather be based on the illusion of change and therefore will not be able to truly transcend the status quo. Mm. A feminist conception of an alternative economy will include all that has previously been said about autarky and decentralization, but it will place the transformation of the existing sexual division of labor based on the breadwinner housewife model at the center of the whole restructuring process. This is not mere narcissistic self indulgence of women, but the result of our historical research as well as our analysis of the functioning of a capitalist patriarchy. Feminists do not start with external ecology, economy, and politics, but with the social ecology of the center of which is the relation between men and women. Autonomy over our bodies and lives is therefore the first and most fundamental demand of the international feminist movement. Any search for ecological, economic, and political autarky must start with the respect for the autonomy of women's bodies, their productive capacity to create new life, their productive capacity to maintain life through work, their sexuality. A change in the existing sexual division of labor would imply first and foremost that the violence that characterizes capitalist patriarchal man-women relations worldwide will be abolished not by women, but by men. Men have to refuse to define themselves any longer as man the hunter. Men have to start movements against violence against women if they want to preserve the essence of their own humanity. This demand for autonomy with regard to women's bodies also implies that any state control over women's fertility has to be rejected. Women have to be freed of their status of being a natural resource for individual men, as well as for the state as the total patriarch. True women's liberation will be the cheapest and most efficient method of restoring the balance between population growth and food production. This is indeed the main flaw in Caldwell's otherwise excellent expose of an alternative homostatic society. Population control is still considered the responsibility of the state. It is not in the hands of women. They are not considered as fully responsible human subjects as long as men or the state still try to exert control over their fertility. Mm. Secondly, in an alternative economy, men have to share the responsibilities for the immediate production of life, for childcare, housework, the care of the sick and the old, the relationship work, all work, so far subsumed under the term housework. Where this work would have been socialized to some extent, which may be useful, men have to share this work on equal terms with women. In a community keen to preserve its autarky and to follow a non exploitative path of human development, This housework could not be paid. It would have to be free work for the community, but each man, each woman, and also children would have to share this most important work. Nobody, particularly no man, should be able to buy himself free from this work in the production of immediate life. This would then immediately have the effect that men would have to spend more time with children, cooking, cleaning, taking care of sick, etc., and would have less time for their destructive production in industry, less time for their destructive research, less time for their destructive leisure time activities, less time for their own bodies and minds. They would re experience work as both a burden and enjoyment, and finally also develop a different scale of values altogether with regard to work. Only by doing this life producing and life preserving work themselves, they will be able to develop a concept of work which transcends the exploitative capitalist patriarchal concept. Ugh, sorry, I'm getting dry mouth.
It's okay. It's so amazing. I love it so much.
Oh, good. A change in the sexual division of labor would have the same effect on the level of the individuals which the change in the international division of labor would have on the level of whole regions or nations. A political decision, oh, come on, a political decision in the overdeveloped countries to delink their economies from the exploitative world market system and to establish self sufficiency in the main areas will pave the way for economic development in the underdeveloped countries. Similarly, a conscious decision on the part of the overdeveloped men to forego building up their ego and identity on the exploitation and violent subordination of women and to accept their share of the unpaid work for the creation and preservation of life will make it easier for women to establish autonomy over their lives and bodies and to
The
come
real
to a new
question is, how do
definition.
we get them to do that?
Yeah, well, we'll get there. we get,
Uh,
next one's called intermediate
oh,
steps.
oh,
So, yeah, life will make it easier for women to establish autonomy over their lives and bodies and to come to a new definition of what women's identity is. These processes of liberation are interrelated. It is not possible for women in our societies to break out of the cages of patriarchal relations unless the men begin a movement in the same direction. A men's movement against patriarchy should not be motivated by benevolent paternalism, but by the desire to restore themselves a sense of human dignity and respect. How can men respect themselves if they have no respect for women? In the same way, the overdeveloped peoples have to start rejecting and transcending the economic paradigm of ever increasing commodity production and consumption as a model of progress for the underdeveloped countries and their economies. Yet the change in the exploited international division of labor cannot come within a short time. Similarly, the establishment of ecologically balanced autarkic economies will take time and demand an immense intellectual, moral, and physical effort. But the change in the sexual division of labor could be started immediately. Each man and woman could start his or her individual level. Groups of women and men could develop different models. Larger political movements like the peace movement, the ecology movement, national liberation movements could immediately experiment with a changed sexual division of labor and develop their alternative ideas about a better society from these central experiences. If this happened, feminists would lose their skepticism regarding many of these movements, because time and again we have seen that women's mobilization for such movements ended up with the old or a new patriarchal division of labor. Mm. There is still another reason why feminists must insist on the centrality of the change in the sexual division of labor. Our analysis of the socialist countries has shown that the maintenance or the creation or of the bourgeois patriarchal sexual division of labor and of the nuclear family is the apparently insignificant gate through which reactionary forces can again find entry into a society which tried to free itself from the clutches of imperialism and capitalism. As long as the sexual division of labor is not changed within the context of an alternative economy, capitalism will not be abolished. For the time being, however, feminists in the underdeveloped and the overdeveloped societies do well to keep their skepticism and critical sense. They must insist again and again that there will be no liberation for women unless there is also an end to the exploitation of nature and other peoples. On the other hand, they must also insist that there will be no true national liberation unless there is women's liberation and an end to the destruction of nature. or that there cannot be a true ecological society without a change in the sexual and international division of labor. When I mentioned before about like centralizing this movement, I won't even like consider just going along with movement unless they act like it needs to be done together. This is what I mean. Like it's been separated, and you kind of have to see it as a whole, like go for the whole, or else it won't happen. Because if you don't do anything about economy, then women's liberation is never going to do anything, right? Because you're just using it as a cultural sense. But if you just do economy, then you're going to just have it, represent itself again because you haven't fixed one of the main issues. So it does have to kind of go together, right? It can't just be one or the other. So, because I think I've said that before. I think in one of our many
Oh,
discussions.
definitely, definitely, definitely.
Yeah. It is precisely by putting one of these contradictions into the limelight and by pushing the others into the darkness that capitalist patriarchy has been able to build up and maintain its dominance. This strategy is at present followed by a number of people in the ecology and alternative movement. Following the old Marxist Leninist strategy of primary and secondary contradictions, they have put the ecology crisis into the center now. But they no longer talk of capitalist exploitation of third world countries. Yet we know that the governments in Europe and the USA will try to solve the ecological and economic crises in their countries by dumping their dangerous factories and products into underdeveloped countries. And the cheap food, cheap clothes, cheap sexual services, etc., will be provided for this class of white rentiers by further exploitation of third world countries and peoples. Of course, there are also white women who will belong to international class of non-producing rentiers who are maintained and alienated by increased exploitation of third and second world countries. But by and large, women in the overdeveloped countries will increasingly share the destiny of the other developed countries. By their invisible, low paid, or unpaid work, they will provide the base upon which the international male white class will march into the post industrial paradise. Yeah. Mm. So basically, like, your privilege only lasts so long because it's not meant for you. Okay. Intermediate steps. In discussions about alternatives to the existing destructive order, the question immediately arises: how does one get from here to there? How do such beautiful utopias help us to change reality in the direction we want? Are the powers that stand against us not overwhelming? Internationally operating capital, the big transnational corporations, the ever increasing interplay between the scientific and the economic, the military, and the political establishments, the rivalry of the two superpowers, and their never ending spiral of producing ever more destructive arms, the extension of these destructive weapons into outer space, etc., etc., versus this formidable threat to all human life and to life as such. Many women and men in the West feel utterly helpless and tend to close their eyes and wait in a defeatist manner for the unavoidable Holocaust. I think feminists cannot afford such defeatism, not only because it would be suicidal, but also because it's unrealistic. As long as class society exists, the collapse of a ruling class has been projected as the collapse of the universe. This is also the case today with the threat of collapse for the capitalist patriarchal growth model. But our analysis has shown that women worldwide have nothing to gain in their human development from the growth of this gigantic parasite. Like that, she still calls it a parasite.
I love
Uh,
that, and I love.
yeah,
I just. Oh yes.
yeah, I love it too. On the contrary, therefore, we should here and now begin to refuse our allegiance to and our complicity with this system, because women are not only victims of capitalist patriarchy, they are also, in varying degrees and qualitatively different forms, collaborators with the system. This is particularly true for middle class women worldwide and for the white women in industrial countries. If we want to regain autonomy over our bodies, over life in general, we must start by renouncing this complicity with patriarchy. How can that be done? I think the strategy could be the same for women in overdeveloped and mm, underdeveloped countries, but the tactical steps might be different. In the following, I shall discuss some concrete steps that could be taken in the direction of freeing ourselves from the clutches of the anti human and anti woman capitalist patriarchy. I shall begin with what could be done by Western feminists. See, she actually goes into this shit. All right, I said good. So, next is autonomy over consumption. An area which has been almost totally left out for political struggle in the West has been the area of consumption. Trade unions, political opposition groups, as well as the women's movement have addressed their protests and demands either to the bosses of the economy or to the state, or to men in general. Rarely have they discussed their own role in the exploitative system, and yet it is common sense um, knowledge that capitalism cannot function unless it is able to create and expand the market for its ever growing amount of material and non material commodities. This market is partly provided by us, the buyers of these commodities. It is mainly provided by the masses in the overdeveloped countries who have the purchasing power due to the exploitative international sexual division of labor. It is also provided to a lesser degree by the urban middle classes in the underdeveloped countries, and it is provided to a large extent by the states and their monopolies over huge areas of the economy. For example, education, health, the postal system, defense. We may not be able to influence the whole marketing system, but a consumer liberation movement started by feminists among women who, as housewives, are important agents of consumption and crucial pillars of the market could go a long way towards undermining the capitalist patriarchy system. Such a movement has a number of advantages in contrast to other social movements. One, it can be started immediately by each and every woman on an individual basis. The decision what to buy and what not to buy is not totally predetermined by our needs and by what is offered in the market. Perhaps more than 50% of what is bought and consumed in households in overdeveloped countries and overdeveloped classes is not only superfluous but also harmful. This includes the consumption of alcohol, tobaccos, drugs, a lot of luxury foods, fruits, flowers, but also most of what is produced today by the electronic industry, computers, video sets, other media, music, TV. Particularly the products of the new growth industries are no longer meant for the satisfaction of basic human needs, but for the creation and expansion of new addictions of passive consumers. We cannot say that we have no choice in buying and not buying these things. Otherwise, we hand over the last bit of our subjective individual freedom to Mr. Capital and agree to become mere puppets of consumption. Thus, the individual refusal to buy superfluous and basically harmful luxury items would enlarge the area of freedom within each individual woman. Two, apart from a boycott of luxury commodities, feminists, if they want to be true to their political goals, must boycott all items which reinforce a sexist image of women or anti woman tendencies in our society. Thus, the new wave of beautifying women created by the garment and cosmetics industries as a kind of counterattack against the feminist refusal to shape their bodies and appearance according to the standardized model of an attractive and sexy woman can be successfully disturbed if women openly boycotted cosmetics and new sexy fashion fads. Uh, Three, similarly, the manipulation of women as housewives and mothers carried out by the multinational food and pharmaceutical industries and others can be thwarted if women consciously refuse, as far as possible, to buy certain items like, for example, the chocolate milk products, fast foods, drugs, etc., produced by such multinationals as Nestle or Unilever, Bayer or Hoist, whatever that company is, maybe doesn't exist anymore. Of course, the enslavement of Western housewives to Mr. Capital has already reached such an extent that a consistent boycott of all such items would lead to immediate starvation. Therefore, the boycott of items which reinforce the tendencies to define women as sex objects and supermothers can only be selective. Four, a further essential criterion for the selection of commodities to be boycotted is the degree of exploitation of third world producers, particularly of third world women, incorporated and materialized in the commodities. Thus, women who buy lipstick made by Unilever or any of his daughter firms can be sure that they too are contributing to the further exploitation and expropriation of poor tribal women in India. They too are responsible for the destruction of the autonomy of these women had over their life production. A boycott of such items would therefore mean both the liberation of women in the overdeveloped countries from sexist image of women and an increased autonomy of poor third world women over their environment and subsistence production. Lipstick and cosmetics provide a good example of another criterion in the selection of articles to be boycotted by women, namely the degree to which, in the production of these commodities, living organisms are being subjected to brutal violence, and how far the ecological balance of the producing areas and countries has been set up. In short, the destruction of nature, which is inherent in commodity production, must also be a criterion for refusing the purchase of certain commodities. This aspect has mobilized the Friends animals, for example, the Animal Protection Associations, to campaign for a prohibition on experiments on living animals by the cosmetics industries. Feminists could certainly support such a campaign, but if they want not only to feel for the humanity of the animals who are tortured as guinea pigs in the production of cosmetics, but also to be aware of their own humanity, they must extend this campaign to a boycott of the cosmetic products by these firms. But how do we know about the various exploitative relations which are materialized in the commodities we buy and consume? How do we know that the lipstick I buy contains the starvation of women in Bihar, as well as the torture of thousands of guinea pigs and mice in the laboratories of the NNCs? Indeed, capitalist commodity production, with the most total division between producers and consumers, is an international social and sexist division of labor, has been able to, oh, come on, mystify almost totally the exploitative relations incorporated in the commodities. Blind consumers are linked to blind producers. A feminist consumer liberation movement, therefore, has to start with lifting off this blindness, with a demystification of the commodities, a rediscovery of the exploitation of women nature colonies inherent in these commodities, and an effort to transform the market relations which link us to de facto to women, men, animals, plants, the earth, etc., into true human relations. This means to rediscover concrete people behind the abstract commodities. This can happen if we try to trace the path of a certain commodity has traveled until it reached our tables or our bodies. At the end of this journey, we would meet, in many cases, poor women and men in this underdeveloped countries and learn about how they produce certain items for the world's market, what they get for their work, how this has changed their autonomy over their life production, what they feel about this, and how they struggle to maintain or regain their humanity. A consumer liberation movement would therefore also imply a new and fascinating learning process, a consciousnization different from that of the early feminist consciousness raising groups, which would indeed clarify our minds about the reality and the of existing relations within which we live and work, both as objects and as subjects. The revival of social awareness of all the exploitative relations inherent in the commodities would extend the area of subjective freedom within people much more than any amount of book knowledge accumulated by so called experts. It would increase our autonomy over the knowledge about nature, foreign peoples, and their lives and struggles, and enable us to decide what we need and what we do not need. Concretely, this means that feminist groups in the overdeveloped and underdeveloped countries could begin to make such concrete studies of certain products, selected according to the criteria spelled out previously, publish the results, and feed them into the international network of women's groups and organizations who would be ready to join such a consumer liberation movement. At this last point brings us to the question of the politics of such a movement. Although it can and should be started by each individual woman in her immediate surroundings, where she has a certain amount of power and freedom of choice, it is clear that individual acts of renunciation or boycott will not have the desired impact on a big capitalist corporation. Only a social and political boycott movement could have a major effect. This means women's groups or organizations must publicly announce their boycott campaigns, accompany their actions with information and analysis about the exploitative relations in the product they have selected as target of their campaign, and create a wide publicity for this movement as it is possible without betraying its basic principles. The formation of such action and reflection groups would by itself have another liberating effect. It would liberate women from the affluent societies, particularly housewives, from their automized, isolated existence within their tiny cages called households. Liberate them from their depression, drug addictions, the housewife syndrome, and their need for compensatory consumption. It would bring them back into the public sphere and make them aware of their place in the worldwide network of social relations. Politics of a feminist consumer liberation movement would include, but go beyond, the strategies of the critical consumer movement started in the USA and Europe by people like Ralph Nader or Hans A. Pestalozzi. I don't know who that one is. Whereas in most of the movements, the self interest of the consumer in having clean, healthy, chemically unpolluted, and unadulterated products is linked to the ecological consideration of preserving scarce energy resources and maintaining an ecological balance. The aspect of women's exploitation of underdeveloped countries is mostly excluded. Thus, Pestalozzi is a spokesman of critical consumer movement in Switzerland, but he believes that critical and ecologically conscious consumers would not endanger our system of free society and economy. He pleads for new marketing strategies to be adopted by the managers capitalist corporations. Feminists cannot be satisfied If international capital uses our consumer boycott of certain items only to develop a new marketing strategy to make us consume so called health food, produced perhaps in alternative self help enterprises, which may work on a contract basis for the multinational food corporations, as we have already been seen happening in the underdeveloped countries, we know by now that any such partial liberation, if it takes place within the framework of internationally operating capital, it will be compensated for by the further exploitation and subjugation of some other categories of people and of nature elsewhere. A feminist consumer liberation movement would certainly subscribe to the slogan coined by the French organization Terre des Hommes, Frise des Hommes. I can't speak French. Which, quote, to live better here and to fight hunger there, end quote. It would have to keep in mind, however, that to live better here cannot mean an extension of the principle of egotistic self-interest, but has to be given a new content by creating non-exploitative, reciprocal relations to our bodies between men and women, our natural environment, and people in the underdeveloped world. On the other hand, the slogan expresses the desire that the definition of what the good life or human happiness is should no longer be left to the lieutenants of transnational capital, but that we ourselves begin to define it. Women should never forget that it is we who produce life, not capital. So, essentially, creating boycotts movement, which we do see with BDS, does work if you starve corporate from their capital, but you have to actually have a collective movement to do so. Sorry, I'm just drinking my voice. Mm. Okay,
That's
next
okay.
is
I'm watching the puppy try and play with the big dog, and she's not having any of it, and it's really funny.
yeah, puppies. So cute. Poor puppy. Just wants to play. Okay, so next is autonomy over production. Mm. I don't know if she gets into this, but also another idea would be to find out workers' rights going on into certain factories and stuff like that. And sort of like if you're working, say, at a clothing place or whatever, right? Figure out what your company is doing in the third world with the, different factories and stuff like that, and talk to them about what they would need to like actually start up a movement where they get rights and protections and stuff like that, right? Because that's a big thing too, is that if we work together with the same production line with those that of the underdeveloped in which we are connected, would make a big difference. I just wanted to put that out there. She might explain that more in detail. I just wanted to put that out there. Okay. Autonomy over production. A feminist consumer boycott movement would be one step in the direction of our liberation. Another equally necessary step, which would follow from the first, would be a movement to regain control over the production processes as such. Yeah, I think she goes in on this. This, of course, ultimately implies that women and producers in general regain control over the means of production. But before this can be achieved, control over their production decisions would become a goal for trade unions and other working class organizations. It is absolutely absurd that the Western working classes accept the production decisions. For example, the automation of production, arms production, the production of dangerous chemicals, and of luxury items, all in the name of preserving their jobs and of an abstract idea of progress. Meanwhile, it is obvious that they will neither save their jobs by this strategy nor avoid this destructive production. But the male workers often advance the argument that they have no choice because they have to feed a family. This argument is partly a pretext because women are as much the breadwinners of their families as their men. But women who are serious about our liberation could go a long way to regain a greater measure of autonomy over production. This could start by producing more of the things we need ourselves. It could also mean that urban people could think of ways and means to grow food in the cities. It could further mean to establish new local markets between small, ecologically oriented peasant producers and urban women, where a direct link between production and consumption would be reestablished. Through such a link, it would not be difficult for urban women and children to go to the countryside in their holidays, not as idle tourists, but as farm workers who would work on the farms of such small peasants for an exchange of the products thus commonly produced. This would come near Caldwell's vision of diverting industrial labor to labor intensive agriculture, but in contrast to his vision, it would not be the state, but producer consumers themselves who would organize such a system of labor exchange between city and village. It would be important, however, to make sure that such a system of production consumption would not be degenerate into the well known informal sector, which then, in dual economy, would only serve to feed the formal sector. This sector would go on as before to produce its destructive high tech and other useless commodities, and the informal sector production would gain mainly subsidized wages in the formal sector. Therefore, autonomy over production must also eventually become a demand of the trade unions, of men and women in the trade unions, and in other movements like the ecology and alternative movements. A broad consumer liberation movement could be a direct challenge to the classical wage workers' self image that they are the necessary breadwinners of their families. With more and more people returning to some new form of subsistence production, the myth of capital and wage workers as the producers of life would have to disappear. Um, and this is actually, I just wanted to point out that this is something that's been done by some groups. I know that in the States, the Uhuru movement, which is the African socialist movement, does this. They do the urban, like they have markets and make their own food and like have to, help out, right? The community that they're in to produce their own food. So they're not reliant on grocery stores or products coming from other places, right? And have autonomy over that, which I think is really important. But that's just my little input there. All right, then we move on to struggles for human dignity. It would be contrary to the principles of the autonomous women's movement if I tried to present a catalog of what feminists in Africa, Asia, and Latin America should do. Since the emergence of a feminist movement in many underdeveloped countries, the discussion on the analysis of their situation, on possible strategic and tactical steps, on necessary actions is carried out by third world women among themselves. But since, according to our analysis, women in overdeveloped and underdeveloped countries are linked to each other by the world market, it would be unrealistic to pretend that we can concentrate only on our respective situations of movements and close our eyes to what is happening in other parts of the world. In particular, since the rebellion of third world women against patriarchal exploitation and oppression was sparked off by similar issues, for example, the issues of violence against women, we can identify several points on which third world and first world women could be united. This is above all the case in the area of body politics, whereby women worldwide demand autonomy over their bodies and lives. The following is not a full fledged strategy for joint actions of feminists in overdeveloped and underdeveloped countries. I only want to point out certain areas where united struggles could take place and reflect on some experiences of such struggles. Body politics implies a struggle against all forms of direct violence against women, such as rape, women beating, clitorectomy, dowry killings, the molestation of women, and against all forms of indirect or structural violence against women embedded in other exploitative and oppressive relations like class and imperialist relations, as well as in patriarchal institutions like the family, medicine, and the educational systems. Within this sphere of body politics, there is unity among women about the central goal of their struggles. This is ultimately the insistence on the human essence of women and their dignity, integrity, and inviolability as human beings, and a rejection of their being made into objects or into natural resources for others. Mm. I think that if this deepest dimension and motive force of the previous mentioned struggles were recognized, it would no longer be possible for one exploited and oppressed group to exert its humanization at the expense of another exploited and oppressed group, class, or people. For instance, white women could not expect their humanization or liberation at the expense of black men and women, oppressed for first and third world middle class women at the expense of poor rural and urban women, oppressed men, black or white workers and peasants at the expense of their women. The struggle for the human essence, for human dignity, cannot be divided and cannot be won unless all these colonizing divisions created by patriarchy and capitalism are rejected and transcended. If we study the brief history of the new women's movement in underdeveloped and in overdeveloped countries, we can identify a number of struggles which started with the aim of preserving the human integrity and dignity of women, in the context of which these colonizing divisions were transcended, at least tendactically, and in the prospect of a new solidarity emerged. The solidarity is not based on the narrow self interest of the respective groups, but on the recognition that capitalist patriarchy destroys the human essence, not only in the oppressed, but also, and perhaps even more so, in those who are apparently profit from this oppression. Thus, the feminist struggles against male violence, against rape, wife beating, the molestation and humiliation of women, have been a rallying point for women in first and third world countries. The literature on these issues has been translated and read in many countries. Women can identify with the other women across class, racial, and imperialist barriers if they have begun themselves to struggle against male violence. Thus, in India, the struggle against rape and dowry killings transcended the barriers created by caste and class. There was genuine solidarity among women on these issues, although these divisions did not disappear. Mm. The barriers between women and men can also be transcended if women and men courageously begin to struggle against male violence. In traditional left organizations, the issues of rape, wife beating, and the molestation of women are played down by the leaders. It is assumed that a campaign around such issues would be divisive for the unity of the oppressed class, the workers, the peasants. Thus, women in these organizations are told to subordinate their grievances about such private matters to the general aim of class struggle, the anti colonial struggle, the land struggle, etc. Third world middle class women are particularly susceptible to this line of thinking and often ready to postpone the struggles around the man woman relation in some distant future. It has been my experience, however, that poor peasant women in India were not ready to accept this subs- subsumptionist strategy. They have shown that a determined struggle against male violence did not undermine the unity of the poor peasant class, vice versa, the oppressive landlord. Example of how the division between third world and first world women can be successfully overcome was and is the combined international struggle of Western feminists in Holland and West Germany and that of feminists in Thailand and the Philippines, who have launched a campaign against sex and prostitution tourism to third world countries. One such joint action was organized by a group of third and first world women in 1982, both at the airport at Schiphol, Holland, and in Bangkok. At Schiphol Airport, the women informed the passengers on a flight to Bangkok about the inhumane exploitation of young women and girls in Thailand by the European sex tourist industry. At Bangkok Airport, a similar group greeted the European men who had been flown in for a sex tour with posters telling them that Thai women were not their prostitutes. This action was so embarrassing to the Minister of Tourism that he was compelled to make a statement saying that the government welcomed tourists, but that it did not want Thai women to be used as prostitutes by foreigners. A further outcome of this joint campaign is the creation of a center for Asian women in Frankfurt, the entry point to Europe for many women from Asia who are brought there as so called wives by German men and who, in most cases, end up in the brothels of Frankfurt or Hamburg. Though this campaign started with the spontaneous rebellion of women against the cynical form of neo patriarchy, it inevitably led them to recognize the joint commercial interests of the tourist industry and of men. Similar joint campaigns and actions of third world and first world women have been started around the issues of family planning, fertility control, genetic and reproductive engineering. Here, too, the principle of autonomy over our lives and bodies has been the starting point. Whereas feminists in the West have been struggling for years against the state, which demands more white children from them, third world women are beginning to realize that they are subjected to coercive and even femicidal tendencies because they are not supposed to breed more children. In such joint campaigns and actions, feminists are not only in a position to expose the policy of fascist selection and annihilation, but also to identify clearly the corporate interest and the people behind them who manipulate women worldwide for greed for ever growing accumulation. The case of Depo-Provera, prohibited in the USA because of its cancerous qualities, but dumped in third world countries, is perhaps the best known example of how third world and Western feminists can work together to expose these tactics. With the new developments in reproductive and genetic engineering, the combination of the experiences, analysis, and the information of third world and first world women absolutely crucial for any movement of resistance. All these struggles were and are taking place in the sphere of body politics. A combination of struggles and actions on the part of feminists in overdeveloped and underdeveloped countries can expose and undermine the double faced policy of international capital towards women. Third world and first world feminists can overcome the colonial divisions by fighting jointly against the dehumanizing and anti women tendencies of capitalist patriarchy. It is more difficult to discover commonalities between women in overdeveloped and underdeveloped countries in the sphere of economics or economic struggles, because this sphere is, as we have seen, almost fully controlled by the international and sexual division of labor. Within this framework, third world women producers are related to first world consumers in this contradictory, even antagonistic way. If world market factories producing garments and underwear for Western consumers strike for better wages and work conditions, the companies can demand higher prices for their products from Western consumers. Even if Western women were made aware that such higher prices were the result of strikes in one of the relocated factories, it is not certain that such higher prices would reach the actual producers. On the one hand, if feminists were to start a boycott of such products in support of striking women in these factories, the women there might not be able to understand such an action because within the given structures, their immediate interest in keeping a job and getting a wage is immediately tied up with the interest of capital in selling its products. On the other hand, women in Europe who worked in textile industries which were relocated to Asia or Africa lost their jobs to badly paid Asian or African women. And between these two categories of women workers, there is no material base for solidarity. If one set of women tries to better its material conditions as wage workers or consumers, not as human beings, capital will try to offset its possible losses by squeezing another set of women. This within the given framework of the International Division of Labor and of the wage workers' interests closely bound up with those of capital, there is little scope for true solidarity between third and first world women, at least not the type of solidarity which can go beyond paternalistic rhetoric and charity. But if women are ready to transcend the boundaries set by the International and Sexual Division of Labor and by commodity production and marketing, both in the overdeveloped and underdeveloped worlds, if they accept the principles of self sufficient, more or less autarkic economy, they are ready in third world countries to replace export oriented production by production for the needs of the people. Then it will be possible to combine women's struggles at both ends of the globe in such a way that the victory of one group of women will not be the defeat of another group of women. This could happen, for instance, if the struggle of third world women for the control over their own land and their subsistent production often fought against the combined interests of international or national corporations and of their own men was supported by a consumer boycott in the overdeveloped countries. A feminist led consumer liberation movement in the overdeveloped countries could prepare the ground in many respects for a women's production liberties movement in underdeveloped countries. This would be a movement of people to use the land and the human and material resources available in a given region for the production of those things which they need first: food, clothing, shelter, health, and education. At the same time, their economy would be partly delinked from the market, from the world market, particularly from the international credit trap. The combination of a consumer liberation movement in the West with a production liberation movement in Asia, Africa, and Latin America would not leave much incentive for the MNCs to further colonize these countries through the unjust international division of labor. Many of them would close down their sites and move back to their fatherlands. The local industries would then have to produce for a home market and not for the already overflowing markets of the affluent societies. In the West, the drying up of cheap imports from third world countries would lead to a higher prices of all basic consumer goods, would force economies to return to their own agricultural base, and would put an end to hypertrophic, wasteful, and destructive production. It would be a logical consequence of such movements that the models of man the breadwinner, women the housewife, had to be given up. For without the exploitative international division of labor, there would be very few men in the erstwhile overdeveloped countries who would be in a position to feed and maintain a non working housewife. All would have to work for the production of life for their own subsistence, and the woman would have to demand that men too accept their share in this life production. The bourgeois model of the housewife would eventually lose its attraction as a symbol of progress. And we're done.
Oh
Ah,
wow. Wow, 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 wow. Thank you so
yeah.
much. Oh,
Yay.
oh my goodness. Like, go back to
Because that
subsistence
was it.
farming. I was I'm sorry.
What?
Go what
Sorry?
what were you saying? You go first.
No, I said, and that's the whole reason. Like, if you instead of just doing your own things here and just have, just working like for your own movements, like for your own necessity, right? Without understanding the link and then actually having discussions and without that sort of industry like um input or whatever or control, and then you
Mhm.
can figure out ways where you can have your own subsistence or whatever, community farming, and that
Right.
way, yeah, but and then take a hit on you because we are in the first world going to be the ones that are able to take the hit, and we should do that for the humanity of people that we don't see but we are linked to, forced linked into, right?
Yeah.
But you have to have discussions within these two categories, right? That's been separated. We have to we have to put together, like, re-communicate with them on what kind of like what's going on with their laws and all that, and like kind of you know what I mean. Figure that a way out that works for both. And yeah, that is going to probably have a hit on first world, but I mean, if you can do it, you should do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. It's funny how we supposedly have that level of communication these days, and yet that we don't see much of that.
Yeah. I would also point out you have to be careful too about certain organizations. If you wanted to go down this path, you would have to look at, if you're not created it yourself, or if you
Hmm.
have created it and you take money, grants or whatever for any sort of movement, if you're doing something international, you have to make sure to watch out for things like NED, National Endowment for Democracy, and
Oh,
USAID, because
yep.
there's been a lot of instances of them funding groups, but it's mostly used as a way to infiltrate other countries in underdeveloped nations, right? And it's for, yeah, for the reason to, yeah, take over, for silent coups, for color revolutions, what they call, I guess you could say that, yeah.
Wow.
So which is like their strategy to take over their government. So you have to be careful not to take grants with them. And if you're in an organization that has taken grants, that's a big red flag, because they're not doing it for, you can't have them take control over that organization, which is what they do when they actually fund certain international movements. So
Yeah.
it would have to be separated from that sort of economic strategy, that you would take money from those sort of, groups, because that's just basic CIA infiltration, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 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 Yep.
But anyways, and that's what people like Gloria,
I
go
know.
Gloria,
Yep.
yeah, would be take, yeah, that's what she did, would do international organizing, but through the mechanisms of the government and CIA money, which
Yeah.
is shady as fuck.
Yeah. Ah.
Mm, that was long, but I'm kind of glad we're done.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you
my
so much for
my poor
doing all
throat.
that reading. I did want to say, whatever we choose next, can we pick something a little more uplifting? Like, if we're gonna read another one going into the new year, I don't know if we were gonna.
I don't think
Next
I
week we're
have one.
just hanging. Next week we're just hanging out, and we can maybe talk
Yeah.
about it next week if you want.
Okay.
That was just my thought, because it's like dreary here today, and I guess it's dreary out where Scott is
You're
today, and
just like,
like,
I just want something positive.
yeah, that would be great. Something a little more,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if I have anything positive.
I was afraid you might say that, but um, we got time to talk about it. We're
Yeah.
probably not going to
Well, I
do
mean, I don't think
anything.
that this is too like too negative. I like the fact that she gives ideas about and
Oh,
steps
oh
about what
yeah,
would help,
oh yeah, oh yeah, and
which
it's
I think is
definitely
important.
important.
I think it's very important to do that. I think it's not sus, but it's like, if you're just critiquing and then not, giving ideas to what could change, it's like, well, then what's the point?
Right? No, yeah, it's easy to criticize, and it's sort of pointless because anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you might not agree with what they claim to, to be helpful, what they perceive to be helpful, but you can at least take it in and then maybe use some aspects of it with your own ideas, right? And kind of branch
Hmm.
off, right?
No,
So
that
even
was
that's not so bad.
fascinating.
It's when they're like, oh, everything's to shit.
Right,
Right?
right, 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 right. It's just complaining. It's just complaining at that point. If you don't have any ideas, then be quiet.
Unless you're just doing like full on material analytic work where you're just analyzing but not actually injecting anything, right? You're really sterile. Then I could see, because what you're doing is you're just giving information. But
Okay.
if you're going to be politicizing things, and if you're going to be like theorizing things, you should be able to theorize like action, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Like what? Not just problems, but also solutions to those problems. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to be if you're actually going to be using your work as a theorization process when you're writing it out, you should be able to come up with something, a little bit
Right.
of input, contribute.
Right. And in these days of rage baiting, I feel like there's so much less of that even than there used to be.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know what it would be that we would read. But so we'll have the video regular hangout thing next
Yeah,
Wednesday, and then
where we can
after that
discuss
is
your awesome
Christmas.
video.
Yeah. But so then after,
Singularity.
yeah, it's this was actually very appropriate to that actually
Oh, good.
about yeah, just the um exploitativeness of the system in which we all live
Yeah.
is
Oh,
very,
yeah.
very, very on point for simulation theory. Oh my god.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the both capitalist economies and their sort of theorizing is very similar to Marx, like with the end goal. Even they see it differently, and that's the point that I think that I break off completely from it is that I like the first part where you're explaining capital as what it is, like in its forces, like of production. That's
Mhm.
good knowledge, sterile good knowledge. But your theorizing hasn't really changed much with the way that you
No,
see future goals and stuff. It just looks like capitalism.
yeah. I loved what
So
she was saying about redefining labor itself with
yeah,
the woman as your stereotypical worker. Like obviously.
yeah, because it's work. It's just
Yeah.
not, yeah. So just because you're not getting paid, that just means that they're exploiting it. That doesn't mean it's not labor.
Yeah.
You dumbass.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you'd be surprised how many people don't see it as labor work, and because it's for life, it's for like the reproduction of life. So they just assume it's a given, which,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
But yeah, I like that aspect of it. That really, that's why it's one of my favorites. Is that really kind of helped me understand my issues I had with Marx that I couldn't really point down, pinpoint.
mhm. Mhm.
The this one really actually kind of helped me. I'm like, that's where it is. That's where my issue lies when it comes to the everything is and how it's linked and why it doesn't why some of Marx's attitudes go the way that they go. But yeah,
Ah.
it's so rainy and gross out right now. And
Yeah, it's
it's
not.
so cold because the cat needed to have a window. So she'd stop meowing in the background. Because you just knock things over.
Oh my goodness, poor kitty.
All right, no. Now she's sleeping on my bed right next to the window, but she doesn't want to go too close to the window. But she wants the fresh air, but it's cold.
Oh, I relate to that so much. Actually, so hard. You don't know.
Red Blair and hello. How are we today? I'm doing well. I'm cold, but I'm well. I don't know if you're watching anymore. Probably not.
Oh, he had it up when I was in there a few minutes ago. It was kind of
Yeah.
weird. Hear you in my headphones and coming out of his monitor at the same time. I'm like, ah,
Yeah. So the
but
17th and what time?
the same time for you. The
Okay.
video will be up at 11, so an hour before that.
So okay, I'll come up and yeah, I gotta know when you're so we're gonna talk about it.
Right, 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 right. You don't
So
have
an
to
hour
be
before.
up for the premiere at what is 8 a.m. for you is when the premiere is. You don't have to be there
Yeah.
for that. That's fine. I completely understand.
No, but I'm
There's
gonna be there
only
for that because I want to watch it before I have a discussion with you on it.
well,
So
right, but so we have from 8, and then for you, the live will go at 9. You
okay,
see
so
what
I'll
I'm
get up
saying? So there's
yeah,
a nice
I'll get up a little bit
wide
earlier.
there's a nice wide window in there for anybody who wants to come along and watch the video before we get together to discuss it. That's always been the idea anyway.
Yeah, I'll still probably get up a little bit earlier just to make sure that I'm like awake for it, like
Oh yeah, yeah,
awake
yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
mind, like so I'm not just like
Yeah.
watching it without taking it in. Wake myself up a bit with a coffee.
Well, that's a good idea. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. You know, you do you. I'm just saying, if you're not there first thing, I understand. You know.
Yeah, have a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
This.
a morning person. I don't like the morning.
No, I'm. It's. I understand. So,
Yeah.
I try to give everybody a little bit of cushion there, so
Hmm. I
I
can't
don't
wait to
know.
see
Maybe
what.
that's not appointment viewing enough. I don't know. There's not the
Yeah,
artificial scarcity of, oh, you have to be there because we're going to discuss it right after. I don't know.
but yeah, but I'm also excited.
Oh, good, good,
But
good. Me
anyways,
too. Me
yeah,
too.
because it'd be nice to speak upon that in relation to what's happening now in the present. There's so much going on
Oh my
with the
God,
tech
yeah.
growth. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. So we can talk about all of that next week. I actually
Oh, I
should
know. I can't
go
wait.
here in a minute. I should go because I still have to
Yep.
go at, yeah. And I need to go talk to him for
Yeah.
a minute
You
because
know
I
how
have
to
a bunch of
explain.
errands to coordinate. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. So I will see you
All
the
right.
17th. All right.
Yeah.
Bye,
Sounds
everyone.
fun. Good luck. See you later. Bye, everybody.